the Hagmann and Hagmann report for today. It is Thursday, February 19th, 2015. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host with my son Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann report. Folks, you're about to hear an incredible 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news, information, analysis, world events like you never heard them before. You're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look well beyond what we see on the television screens, read in the newspapers, and bring you the news behind the news, what's really important, what we really need to know in today's times. Folks, well, for the new listeners, of course, you know, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base on the internet is hagmannandhagmann.com. Please bookmark that site. Our past shows can be found there as well. Just click on the past shows. You've got multiple options. You can download it as MP3s and also on SoundCloud. We're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the hagmannandhagmannreport.com. You've got to spell that all out. Spell it all out, the hagmannandhagmannreport.com. You know, I want to thank everyone for your emails, for listeners, new listeners, really from the Pacific Northwest to the southeast part of the country to Canada. In fact, just received I want to say hello to Amanda in Canada for your fine email, working on your request. Everyone, a couple of new listeners in Europe. Want to say hello to Jonathan in New South Wales, Australia. I want to say hello to you as well, listening live as we speak. Karen in Rome, God bless you. Thank you as well. I want to remind people tonight, we're very proud to represent Casper Mattress. You want a great sleep? Casper is an online retailer of premium mattresses you can get these mattresses for a fraction of the price. This mattress is a fabulous mattress that provides a resilience, long-lasting supportive comfort. Casper's mattress is one of a kind. It's really a hybrid mattress that combines premium latex foam with memory foam. More on that later. But tonight we've got an extremely special show. Jonathan Cahn we have with us. But before that, I'm going to bring Joe on. Joe has recovered from surgery. He had surgery yesterday, folks. He's recovering today. A little rough around the edges, but Joe, welcome.
Glad to be here. Before we bring Jonathan on, I just want to say a quick word about the Orlando Prophecy Summit going on in Orlando, March 5th, 6th, and 7th. Go to hagmannandhagmann.com or go directly to prophecyinthenews.com and register for the conference if you have not already. Our guest tonight, Jonathan Cahn, is one of the speakers there. And if you cannot physically attend the conference, make sure you sign up for the online streaming. It's only $50. You can stream it live, and you'll have it archived afterwards. You'll be able to see all the speakers, and you'll be able to watch it after until the DVD comes out. So it's a great deal if you can't attend the conference. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Dad. We're going to bring Jonathan on.
All right. Yeah, and folks, if you've never heard of Jonathan Cahn, and you've had to, unless you've been living under a rock, as they say, Jonathan Cahn is the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Harbinger, the ancient mystery that holds the secret of America's future. You know, he caused a national stir and has become a fixture on television programs around the country. You've heard him. You've heard everybody just about in the alternative media and in the mainstream media talk about or with Rabbi Cahn. The Harbinger has been hailed by some of America's most prominent leaders. And Rabbi Cahn has spoken on Capitol Hill. He's given the keynote address at the Presidential Inaugural Prayer Breakfast. He's now come out with a new book. Folks, you got to get your hands on this book as well, The Mystery of the Shemitah, the 3,000-year-old mystery that holds the secret of America's future, the world's future, and your future. He leads the Jerusalem Center-Beth Israel in Wayne, New Jersey, and he's the president of Hope of the World in outreach to peoples throughout the world, and he's one of the finest gentlemen you'll ever meet. He's a man of integrity, character, and great scriptural insight, and I can't wait to meet him face-to-face in Orlando. Rabbi Cahn, welcome to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
It's great and an honor to be on with you. I've heard only great things about you for a long time, so it's great to be here.
Well, we're very honored to have you. You know, we've seen you from afar. We've actually we've watched you on Sid Roth. We've watched you in numerous venues, We've read everything we can get our hands on that you've written, and we're very honored to have you. Now, you've got some tremendous insight, but we've got an audience, and look, we've got I tell guests, and I've heard from guests after the fact that we've got the most intelligent audience in the world, the most well-informed audience in the world. But we still have people who really don't know what the Harbinger is. If you want to just kind of give us a Cliff Notes version or a thumbnail sketch of, give us an idea of what it is.
Yeah, the Harbinger is the revealing of an ancient mystery of God that begins in the last days of ancient Israel. And it's a nation that has known God but has turned away from him, and they are now in danger of judgment. God warns them, and he gives them a series of warnings. And these are the 9 harbingers that in one way or the other appear in the land in the last days, really before their destruction. And he's warning them, but they turn away from him, they ignore the harbingers, and they're destroyed in 722 BC. Well, the amazing thing, or the stunning thing, is that the same harbingers that appeared in the last days of ancient Israel are now reappearing again, and they're appearing in America. And they are reappearing in precision with eerie exactness, eerie replaying of this drama of judgment. And each one, 9 of them, every one of the 9 harbingers have appeared and are continuing. And some have involved American leaders. Some have involved the President of the United States. Some have appeared in New York City, and some in Washington, D.C. They've affected everything, and since the book came out, the harbingers have not stopped. They have been continuing to manifest, which is a sign that America is rapidly heading for judgment.
Man, and folks, we're talking with Jonathan Cahn, author of The Harbinger, also The Mystery of the Shemitah, new book. And you're right. When I watched, and Joe and I both did, we watched your interview with Sid Roth on It's Supernatural. We watched, in fact, we also observed the discussion with Glenn Beck when Glenn Beck and his people were talking about the Harbinger. And of course, you wrote this in a fictional account. Why did you do that? I'm just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, well, originally I wrote it. Well, the thing, it began when we're right across the river from New York City up here in northern Jersey. So we saw 9/11, and I was praying, and it began with a revelation that I was there at the corner of Ground Zero, and I saw this struck down tree, and something said, "You have to search this. There's a mystery here." And I did, and then it started unfolding, getting bigger and bigger until I was blown away, and I shared it first at the congregation here at Beth Israel, and everybody was blown away and said, "This word's got to go forth." And I didn't do anything for a while. Then I was led maybe 2 years later to start writing it, putting it in written form. And I originally wrote The Harbinger totally, straight out, nonfiction, as I would have preached it. But when I finished it, as soon as, pretty much right after I finished it, it was like the Lord led me to change this and rewrite the whole thing, but do it in the form of a narrative. And the reason being that it will, there's a lot of heavy things in the Harbinger, and that it can reach more people, and that more people can get it, because it makes it very easy to get it, because you're just, before you even know it, you're getting it. So it was to, just like the Lord used parables and allegories and symbols, and so the narrative, between this prophet and the 9 seals is a vehicle. It's like a prophetic vehicle to convey, to bring to those who wouldn't normally know or get it or pick something up like this, that they can hear it. And so once that came to me, and it came to me in like one day. It was just after I finished the first draft. It just came to me, and the whole thing came pretty much in a flash. And when I started writing it in that form, with the prophets sharing basically what I would have shared, it just flowed, rapid fire. And, I could only do this in my spare time at that time. So it was only maybe a few hours a week, but in 4 months it was done. So it really happened rapid fire.
Gotcha. All right. Wow. All right. Now you speak about, you give presentations about the Harbinger, and I refer back to the one interview that really struck me and gave me chills when I heard you just tick off these 9 signs about the Harbinger, or the 9 harbingers, if you will, relative to Ground Zero. I mean, it gave me the chills, and I was talking with my son, and we were both struck by the story and such. And going off script here a little bit. What let me back up here. You said you're right across the river from Manhattan. I think Joe and I have been in your city. You saw it unfold in real time. What were you thinking at that moment? I have to ask, when you looked over across the river, what were you thinking on 9/11?
Well, I this thing, it hit very close to home. The woman who I was courting was supposed to be there in the building at 9:00. And several people in our congregation were supposed to be in the building, but at the last minute, every plan changed. So first of all, it was very real, right in our midst. And I had a sense that, there was something prophetic. This was a shaking of America, and God doesn't, God allowed it, and there has to be a reason. So I had a sense of it. And then, in that first week, I was praying, and I was just opening up the Bible to read it, and I opened up to Isaiah 9, which, at that time I didn't know that, the Harbinger scripture is right there, but I didn't see it. I mean, it didn't jump out at me yet, or I didn't realize the significance, except the overall context, I did realize the significance, which was that this was the section of the first strike of warning of judgment on ancient Israel, which came in the form of an attack on the land, and it came in the form of a terrorist attack on the land, and that was limited, and that was a shaking, a wake-up call. So I got that part. I didn't yet see the harbingers. I read that verse, Isaiah 9:10, which is the key to the harbingers. I found out later that same week, or a week later, that David Wilkerson, who did the Cross on the Switchblade, and he was the pastor of Times Square Church here in Manhattan, and he was giving a word on this, and he said, the word that I have from the Lord is, and then he starts reading Isaiah 9, and he reads Isaiah 9:10 as part of it. And he had no idea about the harbingers, at that point either, but he just got this as from the Lord, saying that this is God's word to America. This is the first warning here. And so that's, I had a sense, and I think a lot of believers had a sense that this was a wake-up call and a shaking, and yet America didn't wake up. In fact, it got much worse. But for a time, for about 3 weeks, it looked as if there could have been a revival. People were flocking to churches, if you remember, for about 3 weeks. And then it was over. There was no revival because there was no repenting. There was no connecting it to our course. There was no repentance, and without repentance, there cannot be revival. So what's happened is America grew much worse. So, so the first part of this came to me pretty early, and I remember I even shared messages on this. Yet that was before I saw before I saw the harbingers, which happened a while later, only when I was standing at Ground Zero itself. But I knew, pretty soon on, that this was a warning and that this was a prophetic moment.
Wow. Yeah. And go ahead, Joe.
And Jonathan, you said this was the one of the first parts of the judgment coming. I know from your book, The Harbinger and the Shemitah, you talk about the patterns and whether they're man-made patterns of disaster or things, signs as we could call them, or they're natural signs. You talk about how this is happening at a certain year intervals or certain time intervals. Mm-hmm. Can you explain a little bit about the pattern that's behind some of these judgments?
Yeah, well, the first pattern, and this is a very clear foundational biblical pattern, is that before judgment comes to a nation, there is a warning, and there is a kind of an initial warning or taste of what is yet to come, and that came in the form of an attack in the year 732 BC on ancient Israel. With the kingdom of Judah, you have the same pattern. In about 605 BC, you have also an initial attack before this gigantic, destruction is going to come in 586 BC. In the case of ancient Israel, or the northern kingdom, you had about 10 years between that first opening warning strike. That's limited. It's contained. It's a wake-up call. It's stopped almost as soon as it starts, but it's a wake-up call. Well, with the kingdom of Judah, you had 19 years. So there's not a formula, but there are patterns, and very clear patterns. And then which gets even more eerie is that the pattern begins with that strike, but then it just keeps unfolding with specific manifestations, which are spoken of by the prophet Isaiah when he records how Israel reacted to this warning, which was total defiance, and they make this vow in Isaiah 9:10, which is where the harbingers come, where they speak about the bricks falling and the stones they're rebuilding with these hewn stones, and the sycamore being struck down, and the erez tree or the cedar going up. All these things, start unfolding in ancient Israel as they defy God. Well, the same exact pattern, template, happens in America in modern form, but so eerie that it even involves American leaders voicing these words of judgment, the actual words of judgment, not knowing what they're doing, but repeating the ancient vow that pronounces judgment, even to the White House itself. So this has been unfolding, and it's unfolding without people realizing what they're doing. It's not that the president knew what he was doing. It's not that the people who planted the tree or manifested these signs knew what they were doing, but they all end up doing it because this is a biblical template of judgment. And I believe, if God's going to warn, what clearer warning than to use His word and to use the very pattern and warnings of judgment that He used in the Bible.
Very interesting answer to that. And I, after reading your book and really thinking about this and praying about this, Rabbi, I had a question I've been really meaning to ask you about the actions of the people, whether it's the president or at the time George Bush or others. Obviously, and I do believe this. I do believe that in 99, I don't know. I'll stipulate that none of these people really knew that they were actually part of a prophecy or fulfilling of a prophecy. But my question is this: had our leaders repented, hit their knees, and really hit their knees and sought the counsel of God, do you think, Rabbi, that this could have been changed? The outcome could have been changed in terms of the harbinger?
Yeah, it's part of the mystery of free will and predestination in the plans of God. But yeah, that is the thing. What's the point of warning if there's no chance of responding to that warning? So yeah, just as it could have been in ancient Israel, technically. Look at Nineveh. Where the prophet Jonah says 40 years. He doesn't even give a chance. He just says it's going to happen, and yet God changes it because of repentance. So never underestimate the power or the grace of God or the mercy of God in the face of repentance. But that's the thing. I believe God knew at least up to that point and up to this point there would not be repentance. And if we were, a lot of people were thinking there's going to be this awakening because look at everybody talking about God. But if we were there, if we had the eyes to see it at the time, we were there on Capitol Hill the next day when Tom Daschle gets up on the podium of before every leader, every member of Congress, and then voices this vow of judgment, which is of defiance. That would have told us, because it was a prophetic sign which set the course. And America has followed the course of what he said, since that time. So instead of growing closer to God, we have grown farther, because if you reject the warning or you reject the voice of God, you don't get better and you don't stay the same, you get worse. So that's exactly what's happened to America. So yeah, conceivably, yes, but I believe God knew at least up to this point that there wouldn't be, and there would come more. And so that's why I think, that one of the things is that after the Harbinger was finished, I started realizing the Harbingers were not finished. They kept on going, and the president kept doing things. Things happened at ground zero. Things happen, even up to this past year. Things are, I'll say even more, up to the State of the Union address. Things have continued as we continue on our course, which is an ominous thing. So yes, we could repent, but we certainly have not yet.
Gotcha. And that that's just something I often think about. And it's, folks, we're talking with Rabbi Jonathan Cahn. If you go to HagmannandHagmann.com, on the left there, under the program information, there's a link to Jonathan Cahn's site. Click on that, bookmark that. He's got the Harbinger there in a special book and DVD set. Folks, this is one of those books that I would say that this will really... you won't be able to put it down. And Rabbi Cahn outlines really 9 harbingers from the breach all the way through the prophecy and into the second shaking and everything in between. And it is really, as Rabbi Cahn said, eerie in terms of the propheticness of this book. Now, having said that, you weren't planning to write the mystery of the Shemitah. You want to tell us how that came about?
Yeah, I know that I'm to write a sequel to the Harbinger, but it's not something. People have asked that since it came out, and it's not something I can just say, okay, yeah, let me write this book, and because that's it's got to be from God, and things have to happen. And I believe it's going to be linked when I do that. It'll be linked to things that are going to be happening in America and in the world. So I wasn't going to write anything for a time, and at the same time, the publisher said, everybody's talking about the Shemitah because that's one of the things that you begin in the Harbinger. Everybody's talking about it as we approach this year. There has to be something. So they said, we want to write a booklet or something. We want you to be part of it. I said, well, I can help you with that. I said, but you don't even have to put my name on it. I'll just help you with it. And I start praying about it, and I get flooded with. There's so much more that, this mystery is so big, that I'm just literally flooded. And I said, guys, it's not going to be a booklet, it's going to be a book. And I said, still, you don't have to put my name on it. I said, it wasn't going to have my name till the very end. And literally, I also had no time to write. I was traveling, every moment and speaking about the Harbinger and other things. So I wrote the book in hotels and airplanes and trains. And within a 6-week period, it just flowed out. I said, the only way this happens is if God does this, because there's just no time. So it flowed out in that time. It was finished about June. They went over in July, and the beginning of September it was on the shelves. And it went, it's actually gone forth even stronger than the Harbinger. So, it's not something, I didn't plan to write this. The publisher didn't plan quite this, and only the last minute did my name go on it. So, it was, I believe it's similar to the Harbinger in that it just came rapid fire, and it was really not the plan, so I take it this is the Lord's plan. And, the Lord does say he warns before he judges, and I believe even the timing of these things is significant. The Harbinger came out in 2012, and that was a real tipping point year. That was the year that you had an election, the president was reelected, where you had, for the first time, a president speaking for the redefinition of marriage, and you had 3 states voting for that, and you had a real solidifying of the course of America. And since then, when you reach a tipping point, things accelerate. So things have been accelerating in America's apostasy, which parallels the signs of the Harbinger. That they go hand in hand. So I believe that these things had to come out before what is yet to come. And just like with 9/11, people didn't repent because they weren't connecting it. They were saying, okay, it's a bad thing that happened, but we're on the right course. But I believe now that God wanted these things connected so that when the next thing does happen, they will be connected. And I knew when I wrote the Harbinger, I knew there was more to the mystery of the Shemitah. I didn't realize how big it was, but that's why in the book, if you look carefully, there's an exchange between the prophet in the book and the man called Noriel, where Noriel asks, does this phenomenon of the Shemitah, is it just then, or does it go back in time? Is it continuing? Does it happen after, before and after? And the prophet, answers that this is not, that is not for this time to reveal it. So I put that because I believed there was more, but it wasn't the time. But I still had no idea or nothing really prepared me for how big it was and how big it is.
And it's amazing. And ladies and gentlemen, Rabbi Cahn, Jonathan Cahn, has a book out titled, it's The Mystery of the Shemitah. And I have to say, as when I read this book, and folks, It was published back in September. It's already, I don't know, it's really zoomed up there on the bestsellers list through Amazon. You can get it through Kindle version through Amazon. Definitely, you've got to check this out. But the questions that are asked, I mean, is it possible, for example, that there exists a 3,000-year-old mystery that lies behind everything, from the implosion of the New York Stock Exchange, the collapse of the American and world economy, the attack of 9/11, and so on, the rise of nations? Is it possible that this is a prophetic series of events, and is it possible that the words of the ancient texts are determining and controlling the future of the financial realm, the business realm, everything around us? And this is something that Joe and I talk about all the time, and we ponder. But you put it into great detail in your book, and folks, definitely go to our website, HagmannHagmann.com. On the left there, or on the right, I'm sorry, you can click the website to Jonathan Cahn's website, but also check out the Mystery of the Shemitah. So how big, I mean, you've given us an indication how big this mystery is and what it involves, but what exactly is the Shemitah? I mean, for those who don't know.
And it's a Hebrew word, so most people don't know it, or didn't. But the Shemitah is this. I mean, it begins at Sinai. It begins when this law of the Shemitah is given, and that is that people know that every seventh day is the Sabbath day, but what a lot of people don't know is that every seventh year was an entire year of Sabbath. The entire land rested. There was no sowing, no reaping. There was no buying or selling of the fruits of the land, and entire total economic cessation. And on the last day of this Sabbath year comes this really wipeout day on the calendar, and that's what God says at the end of the seventh year. He said, you will basically release all debt. All debt gets wiped out. All credit gets wiped out. The financial accounts of the nation are in effect wiped clean. And this day is called Elul 29, or it's the 29th day of the Hebrew month called Elul. So Elul 29 is the wipeout day. So that crowns the Sabbath year. Well, the Sabbath year is called the Shemitah, and the reason is the Shemitah in Hebrew means the release, because they released the land and they released debt. They released their people. So it means that. Well, it means more than that, but that's the start of it. But the thing is, I mean, this was supposed to be a blessing. This is the Sabbath year where you focus on God, and, it's declaring that God is the owner of everything. Every blessing comes from God, and without God there's no blessing. And so it's all to be that. But when Israel turned away from God and broke every commandment and drove him out of its life, drove him out of its government, drove him out of everything, and they broke the Sabbath and broke the Shemitah. Well, what happens is the Shemitah comes back on the land, not as a blessing, but as a sign of judgment on a nation that has driven God out of its life, that has put money and idols ahead of God, and that strikes specifically the financial realm of the nation, the economic realm of the nation to begin with, but then it can strike the entire nation itself. And it comes home as judgment in the year 586 BC, when in the days of the prophet Jeremiah, when judgment comes upon the land of Israel through Babylon, and the whole land is devastated, and the people are taken captive into Babylon in exile, and the exile lasts 70 years. Well, 70 years. Well, the reason, the Bible gives the reason why 70, because that was the period of time. That's how many Shemitahs or Sabbath years they broke. So now God says, now the land will rest for the time it did not, and enjoy or observe the Shemitahs or the Sabbath. So the Shemitah becomes a sign of judgment that actually is key on revealing the timing of judgment, the length of judgment, when it happens. I mean, very specifically. And the big question is, could this mystery and this pattern and this sign, could this be in effect today? Could God use it today to warn us? And could it be affecting our lives? And the answer is yes. The mystery of the Shemitah has been affecting our lives since the moment we were born. I mean, this is behind the rise and fall of the economic order, the rise and collapse of Wall Street, the rise, the ascending and collapse of nations, kingdoms, empires. And even, I mean, it's so specific. I mean, first of all, it's even linked to the rise of America and what may be the fall of America. And it's so precise, this mystery, that it actually, as far as I know, and I since the book came out, I mean, also people from Wall Street, have been in touch with me, and as far as I know, there is not one other thing aside from this mystery of the Shemitah. I mean, there's nothing aside from it that actually, from God, actually gives the exact dates of the greatest crashes of Wall Street before they happen, not just the season or the month, but down to the date, the day, the hours of when this happens, and long before it ever happened. I mean, that's how awesome God is. And on top of that, the mystery is even the missing key in end time prophecy that people don't realize. The end time prophecy is so keyed into this mystery because, for instance, look at the very end of end time prophecy is the tribulation period. Well, what's that? That's a 7-year period of years. That's a 7-year cycle. That's the Shemitah. That begins with the Shemitah. And it actually is based on Daniel's 77s, which is linked to the mystery of the Shemitah, which is in turn linked to the 77s of judgment on the land of Israel during the captivity. So all that's there, and the mystery of the Shemitah even gives the actual parameters of when end-time events had to happen, including the restoration of the land of Israel, the restoration of Jerusalem, and what may be coming soon. So that's what I mean. It's so big. The more I looked at it, it's just the bigger and bigger and bigger it became.
That's understood. And, go ahead, Joe.
I just wanted to jump back here. So you talk about the Shemitah, the 70 years, first the 7 years, each seventh year being like the Sabbath, each seventh day of the week being a resting time for the land. And this was, as you said, a blessing that was turned into a sign of judgment. And, biblically speaking,
right?
Should we, is this something we need to be practicing today? I mean, obviously our world is too materialistic, too, fast-paced, and too much instant gratification. But should this be something we're following today? Having a Sabbath period at the end of 7 years or 6 years of commerce, or is this something that because it was broken in ancient times, it's still being reaped today?
Well, interesting. I mean, we're not. I mean, on one hand, we're not under the law. On one hand. On the other hand, there are things that God has in His Word that are definitely either right, good, or even eternal. I mean, just like look at the Sabbath day. I mean, no matter where you go in the world, there's a 7-day week. That's based on what God wove into the pattern of creation. And so, but people don't realize He also wove this 7-year period. So, I mean, just like the Sabbath, not doing it as a law, but the principle is a biblical one to have one day of just devoted to being with the Lord. That principle is good, and the idea of a Sabbath year is not a bad thing either. Actually, we get the word sabbatical from the Shemitah. When people say I'm taking a sabbatical, they're talking about a Sabbath year. So the principle is actually good. How to apply it? I mean, people actually ask me about that. And in different ways. Well, hey, people have been led to, stop doing something for a year and doing not necessarily not doing anything, but focusing more on seeking the Lord and less on the material things and all that. The amazing thing is that with or without our observing or not, this thing is it's like in effect, and it's almost like it's almost like with Israel where they. He said, okay, if you do it. If you don't do it, what happens is the Shemitah is still going to come, but it comes now by force, And so now the land of Israel for 70 years literally had a Sabbath, rested. There was no buying or selling anymore. There was no commerce. There was nothing, but it came in the form of judgment. Well, in a certain sense, that's how it has been coming, and I believe it's a pattern that God wove. It's also a sign that God is saying, listen, I'm in charge. I'm in charge of your blessings. I'm in charge of, you don't own the stock market. You don't own the farmlands. The earth is mine. The blessing, every blessing you have comes from me. And so I believe He has a way of reminding us. And then at certain times, if you have a nation like Israel, totally going off into apostasy, well then this sign becomes not just a pattern or a template, but it becomes a specific sign of judgment and warning of calamity. And that's where I believe we are now. And I'll give you an example of, just of how this kind of comes back. If you look at the last 40 years, and remember that the Shemitah first affects the economic realm and financial realm. Well, look at the last 40 years of our history, and there are 5 major financial collapses, long-term collapses of the stock market, and the years are, and it's like where the turning point comes. It's 1973, 1980, 1987, 2000, and 2007. Now, something strange about the dates. Every single one of them is separated by the one before, the one after, by a 7-year cycle. So here you have the cycle of the Shemitah, you have the 7-year cycle, and then you have the entire financial realm going according to it, and a downturn, which is what you would have during the year of the Shemitah, this will collapse, and actually you have the wiping away of financial accounts. But then if you go even more than that, what if, the question is, do any of these things happen not just on the 7-year cycle, but at the actual appointed time of the Shemitah that God appointed from ancient times? The answer is, at every single one of these things which have affected our lives from 1973 onward, every single one of them has happened at the time of the Shemitah year. Every single one of them. And 1973, the crash, year of the Shemitah. 1980, this collapse, year of the Shemitah. 87, year of the Shemitah. 2000 and 2007, year of the Shemitah. And in fact, sometimes people will ask, well, what about 1994? That's right in the middle. Well, 1994, you have the greatest collapse of the bond market in history up to that day. It's called the Great Bond Market Massacre. I just don't include it because it's not the stock market, but it's actually even bigger than the stock market. So every single time you've had this thing happen. And if you look, if we go even further, go look at the 20th century, and you look at the greatest crashes throughout that time, do any of them happen at the time of the Shemitah? The answer is the majority of them do. And if you take the top 3, you have 100% correlation. The top 3, it's 1937 to 1938. That's number 3. It's the kind of second part of the Great Depression. 1937 to 1938 is the year of the Shemitah. The number 2 is 2007 to 2008 is the turn of the Great Recession, the collapse. Well, 2007 and 8 are the year of the Shemitah. Number 1 is the Great Depression. The key year is 1930 and 31. That's the greatest collapse, and that's the key time. 1930 and 31 is the year of the Shemitah. And in fact, it gets more kind of eerie because 1937, the Shemitah begins, and then very next day, Wall Street collapses. In 1931, in the Great Depression, the Shemitah hits its peak, with that Elul 29 wipeout day. It ushers in the greatest month collapse in world history of stock markets in America and across the world. And so you've got all these things. It's an amazing consistency. And then on top of that, the Bible actually gets even more specific, and that is that it not only gives the year, it also gives the time of the year, because there was a certain month that would crown the Shemitah, and when it's called Tishri, and the Hebrew month of Tishri, when it comes at the end of the Shemitah year, actually the end of 7 years, it comes right at the moment of that wipeout collapse. It comes at sunset. And so the thing is that it's the month that manifests this financial wipeout. Well, so the question is, if you look at the greatest day crashes in Wall Street history, do any of them happen around the time of Tishri? The answer is the majority of them do. In fact, if they can happen any time of the year, any month, but they all cluster. They cluster around this one little time period on the Hebrew calendar. And in fact, the majority of them cluster around just 2.5 week period on the Hebrew calendar linked to Tishri. And out the entire year. It's so much so that financial analysts for ages have been saying, why is this thing happening? Why do all these greatest crashes take place at the same time around September, October, Black Monday, Black Tuesday? The answer, they could never figure it out. The answer is in the Bible. It's because God ordained that. That is, September, October is the month of Tishri. So just to give an idea, and one last thing before, because I also want to, this is really so big, and and it's getting more intense now, but if you look at the greatest point crashes or magnitude collapses in history. The 5 greatest crashes, do any of them take place at the end of the Shemitah cycle when the wipeout comes? The answer is every single one of them does. And do any of them take place, I mean, how close are they to the actual Elul 29 wipeout of the Shemitah? That only once in 7 years does this count. The answer is they are the average proximity to that wipeout day in the Bible, that day of impact, is over 99% of the greatest crashes. I mean, so it's amazing. And in the last period of time, and this is really where the Harbingers and the Shemitah come together, and I believe this is a sign of encroaching judgment, is the phenomenon of the Shemitah from in 2001, 2008, and as we approach now, has been intensifying, growing greater, gigantic. Which is a sign of coming judgment.
So, wow. Okay. As we look at this, Rabbi, and you this is so important to me, and I know our listening audience feels the same way. As we look at this, here we are, February 2015. We're in a Shemitah year, and within that time period, every single guest, without fail, Joe, I don't think there has been one that hasn't said this. And especially the economists that come on our show are saying something is brewing, something is going to happen. We expect it to happen in the fall of 2015. Now, the harmonics behind this is just tremendous. This is what we're getting at, isn't it, Rabbi?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the book, this is the one time I give dates. I'm not a date setter, but I do give dates to be aware of, in that, because there are dates given in the Bible. And with 2 cautions. One caution being that, you never want to put God in a box. He doesn't have to do anything in the Shemitah. However, the other caution is, every single time there's been something, and in the last 2, it has been eerily gigantic, colossal, and it could very well be at this time. The only thing that I bring we never want to put God in a box. However, that's one of the reasons why I wrote the Shemitah, that we be prepared. I believe a great shaking is coming to America. I mean, without any question, whether it comes in this cycle or not, a very great shaking is coming, and that will affect the economic realm and the financial realm, and will be even more than that, and will even be a changing of history. Because one of the things we'll see also with the Shemitah is it actually changes history when the conditions are all converging. It actually changes history. The greatest changes of history in the 20th century have happened marked by all converging with the Shemitah. The year of the Shemitah has done right. It's like amazing, and now we're in another one, which there's several signs of what's happening as well. And one of the things is that for people who don't know, I mean, this is the thing that first got me. I mean, this is the thing that first alerted me when I was doing the Harbinger, and then all of a sudden, as I'm doing it, the whole economy collapses. And I had spoken of that when I did the Harbinger, but then when I saw this link to the Shemitah, and I was so blown away, because I'm also to this day blown away that how come all these economists and all these Nobel Prize winners, and none of them even went near the answer that is right there from the Bible. That's so stunning, the Shemitah. And the thing is this, you have these 2 last Shemitahs, which is leading to where we are now. You have 2001, and 2001 you have 9/11. Well, 9/11 actually causes the greatest stock market point crash in history, and it happens on September 17, 2001. And to that day, it was the greatest point crash. Well, it wipes out everything. And when did it take place? Well, September 17th, that's our calendar. But on the ancient calendar, and this is still so mind-boggling, the greatest wiping out of financial accounts happened on Elul 29 of the Shemitah year, the biblical day that comes only once every 7 years, on the exact day that's appointed by God to wipe out the financial realm. That's when the wipeout came of Wall Street, and it's the sign of a nation in danger of judgment, and this was caused by 9/11, and 9/11 in other words, 9/11 had to be part of the mystery too. The timing had to be part for this thing to happen. So here's the first thing, and that record of the greatest crash holds for 7 years. Interesting. 7 years. And finally it's surpassed in the crash of 2008, which becomes the greatest crash period in world history even to this day. And it comes about on September 29, 2008. It's the peak of the Great Collapse, so the Great Recession. And the people of New York go into the New York Stock Exchange. They ring the bell. The bell refuses to ring. Even they take it as an omen or a sign. And that day comes the greatest crash in world history. And when does that one take place? The greatest crash in history takes place on Elul 29, the day appointed by God, the very day of the Shemitah, the wipeout, the release, the day that's appointed to wipe out the financial accounts, and as a sign of judgment on a nation that has driven God out of its life. And so you have the two greatest crashes up to those days in American history, world history, Wall Street history. Each of them takes place on the same exact Hebrew day, biblical day, each one, and the day they each happen to take place on happens to be the very day that God appointed to wipe away financial accounts. I mean, it's mind-boggling, and they are separated according to the mystery of the Shemitah. They would be separated by 7 years. Well, each of these greatest crashes are separated by 7 years, 7 biblical Hebrew years, down to the day, down to the hour, down to the minute, down to the second, down to the closing bell. Only the hand of God could have put that together. This is mind-boggling because every transaction in the world was part of this equation. I mean, every single action affects that closing number. So it's amazing. I mean, that only God is in charge of all this. And I believe it's a very strong sign because the warning of the Shemitah is, the word Shemitah, I said, means release, but it also can mean the collapse or the fall or the shaking. And you've got all that. The warning is that if, in this case, if America doesn't return to God, that a shaking will come, and there'll be a fall, there'll be a collapse, and the American age as we know it will come to an end.
Wow. That's very frightening, but you look at the headlines today. What do we see? We see the rise of homosexual marriage, all these abominations to God, and it's fun. It's funny that we don't think, as a nation, as a people, that we're not going to be held accountable for our rebellion against the Word. I mean, so this is all strengthening this. I don't want to call it phenomena, but it all feeds into this. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the parallel. I mean, with the harbingers, with the Shemitah, that's one side of it. The one side is you're seeing the signs of judgment. The other side of it is, there's something that's causing those signs of judgment. And just like it's exactly as it was with ancient Israel. When the Shemitah came on the land and in the form of destruction, it happened during a time of the nation's apostasy from God. When the harbingers appeared in the land, it happened at the time when Israel was driving God out of its life, as America has been doing. The beginning stage was kind of driving God out of its life, and that's with Israel, that's with America. But then, as the apostasy progresses, what happens is it gets even more and more brazen, and so now it's not just the ignoring of God, it's the defiance of God. And now it's not just not doing good, but it's now calling evil good, and as much as it calls evil good, it calls what is good evil. So the same day, it's no accident, when America is embracing immorality and going against the laws of God and going against the Bible blatantly, in the same way as it embraces evil, it is also calling good. It's calling God, the Bible, the believers, true believers, calling them evil, intolerant, hateful, persecuting them, driving them from their jobs. I mean, things that we have never seen in the history of our nation. And so, God is God. Billy Graham's wife, Ruth, said, famous statement, if God doesn't judge America, he owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology. Now, this was made back in the 1970s. I mean, how far have we gone from that point to where we are now? And it's almost like, even if you didn't know about the harbingers or didn't know about the Shemitah, I think anybody who has a real sense of God has to know, or even knows God's word, has to know that America is in danger of judgment. And I don't believe at this point it's a question of if, it's a question of when. And, we are rapidly racing towards judgment. I mean, and it hasn't slowed down. It's accelerating. I mean, if you've noticed, it's accelerating.
Sure.
When the Shemitah began, we're still in the beginning part of it, but when the Shemitah began in autumn, there were like 17, maybe 19 states that had redefined the biblical definition of marriage and had ended that definition of God. This is thousands of years of history. This is major, and so but it was a minority. Well, between then and now, the Supreme Court made a non-decision in the first few weeks of the Shemitah. And then remember, the Shemitah can also mean the fall. It can even speak of a spiritual fall on top of everything else, a collapse. Well, in this year, we've gone just from that to now 37 states. The majority, in just a few months of the Shemitah, just a few months, we've gone from that to where we are now. And now the Supreme Court is going to rule in June, issue their ruling on the biblical definition of marriage, and I don't think you have to be a prophet to know where this is heading. I've said since the time of 9/11 that if it wasn't, except for the hand of God on this land, except for a revival, this is going to be the law of the land. And once that happens, it sets in motion a whole bunch of other dynamics of persecution and immorality. So and it's all coming to a head in the year of the Shemitah. So to me, there's much more. The Harbingers are coming to a head. Talking about the blood moons, the eclipses, there's so much, that's coming to a head at this time. So, and it goes back to, there's a chapter, as you know, in the Harbinger called the Mystery Ground, and that is that there was a warning given to America on its very first day as a formed nation, and that was when Washington was sworn in, and first president, he gives a warning, and the warning is that basically, I'm paraphrasing, but if America's blessings come from God, if America ever turns away from God, then the blessings of God will be removed from the land. That's what he tells America. Well, we're watching it happen now. We're watching America rapidly turn away from God. And of course, he says this in the Capitol, and the Capitol is not Washington, D.C., the capital is New York City, and then, of course, right after that, the whole government goes on foot to pray and dedicate America to God on America's consecration ground, and that ground of consecration, for those who don't know, that ground of consecration is ground zero. The ancient mystery returns, the judgment returns, that God is saying, America, you have departed from your foundation, and you are in danger of judgment. Return. And that's where we are. That's when 9/11 happened. Now look, as we approach the anniversary of 9/11, which also is another thing that converges. When we hit to September, it's also the 2 Shemitah anniversary of 9/11. There's so much converging, and yes, we are absolutely in danger as a nation.
Convergence is central, to be sure. We've got listeners all over the world, Rabbi, and one of our mutual friends, Cahn in Colorado, just sent me a message here through our contact page. He wanted me to ask you this, and we're kind of taking a little detour here right before the top of the hour, but he wanted me to ask you or mention to you, and I didn't know this. I did not know this, but what can you tell us about you coming up in the Bible code? He wanted me to ask you that, and that's new to me, so I'm not sure if you can speak on that or not.
Well, there have been there have been, I think, three peoples who have contacted us or put on the web that they've seen me in the Bible code, including the Harbingers in some cases, and I believe these are 3 different parts of Scripture that was told to us. But the Harbingers and other things. I can't answer it. I haven't gone into the Bible code to know that. I can't answer it except that I believe it's at least 2, and I believe it's 3. There were 3 different sections of the Bible that they showed to our ministry, or they put on the web, and people from our ministry were told of it. So I can't really answer it except to say that we've heard it. we've heard it.
Do you? I mean, you believe in the Bible, do you believe in the Bible code as being a legitimate tool of prophecy, even if it's in hindsight? Do you believe in that?
Well, I believe that first of all, God's word is so amazing. I mean, and I mean, there's no end to the mysteries of it. God's word is so amazing that, I mean, that there's the primary level and meaning of a scripture that we have to always take first, and we can't let that be obscured. But then there are often many levels of scripture that God, of things that God puts in. And, God is the great weaver of things, putting them all together. So, I mean, I've seen how, God puts in his word, you see one thing and there's so much behind it and so much linked together. So, I don't think it can be dismissed. I think at the same time you have to be careful that we don't abuse it. That people don't also say, well, I want to see this, and this is what I see, and if I put the odds together. So I think that it's something that has to be done very carefully. So I don't think it can be dismissed, and at the same time I think we have to be careful that it doesn't get abused.
It's not a parlor game, that's for sure. Yeah, I get that. Wow.
Yeah, and it also can't obscure. We can never obscure the primary meaning of Scripture. That has to be first. Because the first thing is that. Not. If God says, don't commit adultery. Whatever, however many letters are in the word and whatever else, the first thing is you better not commit adultery.
Yeah, understood. Well, before we break for our first hour, and I want to thank you so much for your gift of time. I know you're a busy man. Ladies and gentlemen, Rabbi Cahn is going to be with us for the balance of the next hour. Before we go to the break, before Joe takes us out, I want to ask you, Rabbi, can you tell our listeners how to get their hands, or the best way to get their hands on your books, The Mystery of the Shemitah, and of course, The Harbinger? What's the best?
Thank you, Doug. The books are the Mystery of the Shemitah and The Harbinger is available everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere. I mean, we have a site and all that, but you don't have to go to the site to get it. It's everywhere. It's everywhere online, from Amazon to everything else, and it's everywhere offline from Walmart onward. But you could get it right now online from, anything online. But you'll see it, Mystery of the Shemitah. If you just know how to spell it, you'll be able to do it, and The Harbinger. And if people want to get in touch with the ministry, all the messages come from there. It's probably about 2,000 messages and mysteries that we have, and also we give prophetic updates and give out things for free. It's really to get the gospel out to the world, but all the mysteries come from there. Just if they want to get in touch, they just have to remember Hope of the World is the ministry. So it's Hope of the World and then .org. So hopeoftheworld.org, and then everything else will follow from that. And if your listeners, and I'm sure you have you have many listeners. If you have any, or if you guys are ever in the New York City area, we're about 20 minutes outside with the Jerusalem Center, and that's in Wayne, New Jersey. So I'm inviting any of you guys to get in touch, and we'd love to have you.
Fantastic. Well, we might take you up on that. You're going to be in Orlando for the Prophecy Conference. Wow. Well, we can get to that after the break. Joe, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, that's where I was going to, on the other side of the break, Jonathan, I'm going to switch gears just a bit and ask you what you plan on talking about in Orlando, if you have a topic set and what you're going to get into.
Well, I think last time you're asking me now to say that?
Well, why don't you hold that thought?
Before
we'll take the break now.
Okay, yeah.
We'll take the break now, and then, after the break. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann Hagmann Report on this Thursday, February 19th, 2015. Our very special guest, Mr. Jonathan Cahn. He is a prolific author, speaker. The Harbinger, Mystery of the Shemitah, his two books that have captivated the prophetic movement and, have piqued interest all over the world. He's done interviews with Rick Wilde, some of the best interviews I've heard. It's fantastic. It's a piece of art, really, from the Harbinger to the Shemitah, and pointing out the patterns, the biblical verses that back up 15. Our guest tonight is Jonathan Cahn. He is a prolific author and speaker. His website is hopeoftheworld.org. That's hopeoftheworld.org. hopeoftheworld.org. I'll post a link in our interactive chat, or you can go to hagmannhagmann.com and find his website from there. Mr. Cahn, the question we left off for the answer in this hour was the topics that you were going to be speaking on in the Prophecy Summit in Orlando, upcoming March 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Yeah, I believe I'm going to be speaking on the unfolding of what the signs, the prophetic signs, warnings, manifestations that are unfolding in this Shemitah itself. And, you know, interesting because it was last year in Orlando that I shared for the first time on the mystery of the Shemitah. It was actually before I even started writing the book. And so now it's going to be what's happening since, what is coming, you know, what has been manifesting, and how we are to be ready.
Fantastic. Well, I can't wait to be there. It's going to be an honor to be there, you know, in your presence and to listen to you. Certainly going to schedule that to hear you. Man, I'll tell you, you're just it's so great. You were talking about the mystery of the Shemitah, the first hour, and of course the Harbinger. One of the sections in your book, in the mystery of the Shemitah, is called the mystery of the towers, and I found that extremely interesting. What is that? I mean, give us kind of an overview of, if you don't mind, what that is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, in the Bible, you know, there's this mystery that goes back to even the Hebrew. The word for tower in Hebrew is migdal, and migdal it comes from the root word gadal, which means to be made great or to become great, to be magnified. So it can also mean pride at the same time and arrogance. But the word for tower is linked to greatness or rising, or it could be linked to the power of a nation rising or a kingdom rising. The first time it appears, it's in Babel, and what is that? It says that we make a name for ourselves by this tower. You know, and interesting, I didn't realize this when, you know, I was doing the Harbinger, but in the original Hebrew when you get to that Isaiah 9:10, that Harbinger vow that brought destruction to ancient Israel and that is now being pronounced in America, before you get to the vow, it says the people say this vow in pride and arrogance of heart. Well, the word for arrogance there in Hebrew is the word godel, which comes from gadal, the same word that means tower. So even when it's talking about they're making this vow to rebuild, and even the word tower is actually in the original language, which is very significant when you get to ground zero and what's happening right now. So one of the things, so you have this link between towers and the rising of kingdoms. Well, could it still be in this day, this connection? Well, here's the thing. In the year 1870, the highest tower, the world's first skyscraper is built, and it's the highest secular tower on Earth. And for the first time, this highest tower is built not in Europe, the old world, but on American soil. And this becomes a marker. Within 1 year of that tower going up, the new age begins. America becomes the strongest economic power on Earth, the strongest. It overtakes the British Empire. And so history is going to change through this moment with the marking of that tower. And from that day on, America is going to build the highest towers in the world and keep getting higher and higher, and as its power keeps getting greater and greater and greater. And this parallel is going to continue on. And then when America reaches its height of power with regard to the rest of the world, it's 1945 when it stands at the pinnacle of power after World War II at superpower. And at the same moment, a tower is conceived to be built. And people don't realize this. This is 1945, but they conceive the tower and they call the tower that they want to build the World Trade Center. And 1945 is also the year of the Shemitah. So you got this connection on one hand, and it's going to run together. You have the tower that speaks of greatness and power, and then you have the Shemitah that speaks of the fall. It actually means let fall or let collapse, you know, and it's about not pride but humbling a nation. So you have that conceiving 1945. Then the tower begins to be built in the year 1966. 1966 is the year of the Shemitah. Then it is built for a number of years. How many years? 7 years, a 7-year cycle, the cycle of the Shemitah. It is completed, it is dedicated in the year 1973. 1973 is the year of the Shemitah. So the tower that's supposed to represent America's greatness, America's power, America's preeminence, America's global, financial, trade, all these things, is conceived in the year of the Shemitah, begun in the year of the Shemitah, built in the years of the Shemitah. It is, and then dedicated in the years of the Shemitah, and then in the year, it is the year 2001, it is destroyed in the year of the Shemitah. And now remember, the Shemitah can mean the fall or the collapse. And so you have the fall of the towers at the time of the Shemitah. You have the collapse of the towers. In fact, 9/11 is linked to the mystery of the Shemitah because 9/11 takes place at the peak of the Shemitah, not just in the Shemitah year, but takes place, and remember, Shemitah can mean the shaking. It takes place in the peak month, actually the peak week, the last week, the time of nullification, wipeout week. And so it happens at that time, and you literally have the picture of collapse. And the thing is that America and the age of America's towers have come to, actually having the largest towers on Earth. It ended just as the 20th century ended, just before 9/11. It was surpassed by towers being built for the first time higher than American towers, where in Asia. And so that American age began to end, and then comes the collapse of a tower. So if the rising of a tower speaks of the foreshadowed the rise of America, what does the fall of a tower foreshadow? What does it speak of? And here now, I mean, this also converges with the Harbinger and the Shemitah, because what you have here now is America responds and says, we're not going to be humbled by this. We're going to come back stronger than ever, just the way exactly as Israel did with Isaiah 9:10. We will rebuild with stronger materials. We're going to rebuild higher and bigger and greater. Well, America makes the same mistake, the same vow without God, we're going to come back stronger, we're going to keep on our path, and we're going to build higher. And remember that the word that introduces this vow of rebuilding in Isaiah 9:10 is the word that also comes from the word that means tower. So here in the ancient translation of the Septuagint of the Bible, when they get to Isaiah 9:10, the Harbinger scripture, they translate it in a very interesting way. Instead of saying the bricks have fallen, we will rebuild with hewn stone, they say the bricks have fallen, come let us build for ourselves a tower. So now, literally a tower that it's going to rise up on the ground where the destruction came about, where the bricks fell. And so literally in America, a tower starts rising up on the ground of destruction at ground zero. This tower was literally born into existence by Isaiah 9:10. It actually came into existence with Tom Daschle when he pronounced the vow of judgment, and we will rebuild. He was talking about rebuilding ground zero the very day after 9/11. So imagine this tower. The whole tower is actually the manifestation of this vow of defiance. That we're going to be higher, bigger, stronger. And so, and this goes up. And now I didn't realize that when I wrote the Harbinger that there was actually a scripture hidden in ground zero. And it was a Bible that had been blown apart, and there was one page left, or that you could see, and a photographer of ground zero takes a picture, and they whisk him out because it was dangerous, and he looks at his camera, and he sees the picture, and he sees the scripture, and he begins to break down and weep. The scripture that was hidden in ground zero was, come let us build for ourselves a tower. And here it is on the ground where the tower is going to go up and where it's gone up. And it's also the translation of the Harbinger, the judgment that is in the Septuagint, same scripture from Babel put onto Isaiah 9:10. And then comes this tower rising. And I didn't realize after I wrote the Harbinger, this happened after, the president of the United States goes down to ground zero, and they show him the tower, and they tell him to put inscribe words on the beam that's going to be the highest beam of the tower. So this is going to crown the Harbinger, the last Harbinger. And so he can put anything he wants. What the president inscribes on that beam, he inscribes in modern American prose, he inscribes the vow of judgment of Isaiah 9:10 on that. That's the highest words in America. Crowning the Tower of Defiance are the words of defiance that brought destruction to ancient Israel. And when the leaders of ancient Israel, when they sent forth this word, when they issued those words, that vow, Isaiah 9:10, it wasn't 30-something words that you read in English. It was only 8 words they said that brought destruction to the nation. Well, the president puts on the beam 8 English words that match the Hebrew. I mean, phrase by phrase. I mean, even even word by word. I mean, in the case of the middle word, it's amazing that brought destruction to ancient Israel. So that tower, I believe, is significant. It's gone up and it opened its doors. Hasn't been dedicated yet, but it opened its doors just about a few weeks after the Shemitah began. So here now you've got the harbingers converging with the Shemitah, because this is the last harbinger, and this is the of the 9 harbingers. This is the harbinger that embodies the vow, and now we're saying, hey, we're going to do it. Now we're kind of flaunting it, saying, hey, we did it. And so here it is standing. So I keep my eyes on ground zero, my eyes on the tower. So you've got all these things converging at the same time and at the time of the Shemitah.
Wow. Okay. And I watched a couple of documentaries, and of course the news footage or the camera footage of him, Obama signing and looked like a Sharpie or something. The words in which you spoke. What does this Freedom Tower represent? And aside from what you said, to me, you've got
the history there.
Yeah, go ahead.
The George Washington dedicating, America at the chapel, right where I believe it's a sycamore tree was struck down.
Yeah,
you can talk about that church and the tree and how that came about.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, what we alluded to earlier was that this prophetic warning is given on the very first day of America's existence as a formed nation, and that's a pattern in the Bible too, because often at the beginning of something or the dedication of something, there are prophecies given or warnings given, a blessing and a curse, given. Solomon did that in the dedication of the temple, and the temple was really the consecration ground of Israel, and so when judgment came, the destruction returned to the same ground where Israel had been dedicated to God. The consecration ground becomes the ground of judgment, the Temple Mount. Well, after Washington gives this warning of what would happen if we turn away from God, the entire government walks on foot from Federal Hall and goes to a place that's appointed for them to dedicate America to God. The first act of the American government, it wasn't to pass a bill or a law. The first act was to pray and dedicate America to God. And so if we can find out where that ground is, we've got a mystery here, and that's the consecration ground of America. Well, America was dedicated to God at ground zero. Ground zero, the ancient mystery of the judgment returning to the ground where the nation was dedicated to God. And here, this ground zero was originally church land, and that's the same ground where the harbingers appeared. That's where the harbinger, the 6th harbinger of the sycamore, was struck down on the soil of America's consecration ground. It was actually growing in that soil. And then the Erez tree, the 7th harbinger, which is the tree of judgment, where they plant in place of the fallen sycamore, that was put on the ground of America's consecration. And all around ground zero, on the day of this shaking of America, all the buildings are ruined or destroyed, except one. Only one is protected, and they called it the miracle of 9/11. Well, what building was it? It was the little stone chapel in which America was dedicated to God. And the reason why they said it was saved or spared was because there was an object that blunted, that shielded it, that took all the force of 9/11 upon itself. What was the object? The object was the harbinger. It was the 6th harbinger, the sycamore. The harbinger saved the church. I think there's something prophetic there that the point of the harbingers, it's not to destroy, or the message, or it's not to consign America to judgment. It's to wake up America from judgment, and that's the point. God is calling it back. But when the 9/11 happened, a shock wave went forth from ground zero, and it struck another object, and it struck it struck the place where Washington was sworn in and where he gave that prophetic warning of what would happen if America ever turned away from God. It put a crack in the foundation of America's foundation, where America began, cracked it right open. And so, the ultimate thing is, if people ask, is there going to be judgment or revival? I believe there can be both. And at this point, I without God, I would see no hope for America. But with God, there's always hope. But what I believe is, I don't believe that there's going to be, that it's going to come. If there's going to be any kind of revival, at this point, America has grown so deaf, so hardened to God, that I believe that only by God shaking this nation is there even a hope or chance for there to be repentance and revival. But I believe there is going to be a shaking. And I believe for those who will hear, there can be revival in the midst of judgment.
Definitely a word of hope, and through God and through our repentance, obviously. Rabbi, we've got a listener listening live in Tiberias, Israel. I believe I framed that right, bordering the Sea of Galilee, who wants to know, you had mentioned about the apostasy earlier, though, about the apostasy of Israel. And the question is this, then I'm paraphrasing, of course, but what is, when you reference the apostasy of Israel, what were you specifically referring to, and does this have anything to do with, or if it doesn't, if you can comment on the current American-Israel relationship as it relates to the Harbinger and the mystery of the Shemitah and upcoming events?
Well, the apostasy is when Israel turned away from God, and it happened both in the southern kingdom, or happened in the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The southern kingdom, Samaria, had happened earlier than the northern kingdom. But the northern kingdom became virtually just as bad. And both times, in both cases, it led to judgment. What the apostasy was that, and with the northern kingdom, it began very early, and that was the turning away from God, and in stages. I mean, the first part is kind of an apathy, with God, and then a coldness with God, and then the merging of God with idols, the merging of God with Baal, and then the outright worship of Baal, and then the rejection, the outright rejection of God, and then the persecution of God's people, the calling of evil good and good evil, the promoting of sexual immorality, the lifting up of their children on the altars of Baal and Molech. Now, these things happen in the northern kingdom, and then later, it would happen in the southern kingdom, and at each time it would lead to destruction to both cases. Now, in America, what you have is also a nation that was founded after the Word of God. Actually, was founded by the Puritans to be a new Israel, and they even warned America at the beginning. They, said there was a blessing and a curse that if you follow God, if America follows God, as much as it does, God will bless it. It will become the most blessed people on earth. But if they turn away from God, the same judgments that came on Israel will come upon America. America was to be another Israel. So here you've got it. Now America was the greatest nation or the most blessed nation on earth and the greatest nation, and that now it is, we are watching as America is turning rapidly from God, and the same judgments, the judgment of the Harbingers in Israel's judgment of 732 to 722 BC in Northern Kingdom, and even the mystery ground, which is of the Southern Kingdom, which is the Temple Mount in 586 BC, and now the mystery of the Shemitah, which also was in the judgment of the Southern Kingdom. So you see it in both cases. Now, interesting, because America has been joined to Israel in many ways, and one is that it's been joined to Israel in the modern day Israel. And I think that the fact that on top of everything, now America and Israel are at their low point of their relationship in the history of Israel, in the history of the relationship. I mean, it's at its worst point, and that is not to put that all together, here we talk about a convergence. The Bible says, I'll bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. And so America, part of America's blessing has been not only following God or being a vessel of God, and also being a shelter to the children of Abraham, but also its support of Israel. So now we're watching as that is deteriorating. So I believe, it's interesting because it's like America is warring against its own foundation, which is linked to Israel. And so, it's almost being manifested by the deterioration in its relationship with Israel. Just as America turns away from God, then it's also part of turning away from God. It's turning away from blessing His people. So I believe this is another ominous sign that all this is happening at the same time. So we have retraced the steps of ancient Israel's apostasy. We have driven God out of our lives, out of our government, out of our culture, out of our school system, out of our children's lives, out of our really every part of our public square. And then we have also embraced idols. We have also promoted sexual immorality. We have also called what is evil good and what is good evil, just as Israel did. And America is beginning to persecute the people of God. And we have also offered up our children, not on the altars of Baal or Molech, but on the altars of self-centeredness and convenience. We have killed not thousands, but millions of children. And so now all these things are coming to a head.
Wow. You said so much there. One thing I want to touch on is the connection to Israel and America. And in your opinion, or has the Lord showed you this to be true, that the Tower of Babel being uncompleted as God confounded the language and spread the people abroad into many different nations, which it says in the Bible that they weren't done with their agenda to build the Tower of Babel. Do you think that America was labeled as one nation under God in order to avoid the judgment that we saw taking place in Babylon, where they did everything and built up the Tower of Babel and the society against the Most High God? Are we seeing this again, only doing it under the name of God as to somehow avert the judgment of being confounded?
Well, I think that, one of the connections is where there is sin, there is confusion. Babel means confusion in Hebrew, and in judgment there is confusion and chaos. And the other key thing, one of the key things you said there is that that under God, under God is really the whole point of it. And we put in there under God in the Pledge of Allegiance, and now there have been attempts to get it out. And whether it stays in there or not, the point is that we are in effect eradicating the words under God by our actions. Everything we're doing, when the Supreme Court, when man and the government says we'll redefine, we'll decide what is good and evil. We become our own God and no longer under God, no matter what. Doesn't matter. The president puts his hand on the Bible and to swear his oath of office with his left hand, and then with his right hand he enacts laws that go against the Word of God. What this is doing is saying that we are not under God at all. And yet, bringing it back to this, the Shemitah is reaffirming that the nation is under God, that God is sovereign, and everything we have belongs to Him. So, it's a dangerous combination, because if we're saying we're not under God, which is like what Babel is, then what the Shemitah comes by force. It came by force on Israel, and so you say, hey, you don't want to affirm that God's sovereignty, fine, but you know what? In the end, it's going to come back, and it's going to be affirmed either nicely or not nicely, either easy or hard, but it's going to be affirmed.
Yeah, I understand that. All right. Rabbi, we've got so many people with so many questions for you. This is one, and we hate to take you off of a certain path, but this is one I haven't heard. I haven't heard you speak on before, and I feel like I'm pretty well read and well versed. However, this is pretty interesting. This is from Regina. She asked. She says this. She said that she's been researching this particular topic, and she has not found a lot on this. It's her understanding that this fall begins the Jubilee year, or the 50th year. That begins in the fall of 2015. But as she writes that she cannot find anything on the 50-year Jubilee. And are you aware of this? And what is the significance?
This is a great question and a wonderful question, and it's not off track at all. And it actually comes at the end of the mystery of the Shemitah. This is totally linked to the Shemitah, and I'll put it this way. But what a perfect question! every seventh year was the Sabbath year, the Shemitah. But every seventh Shemitah, the 49th Shemitah, ushers in a super Shemitah, which is what it really is, but we know it as the Jubilee. And the Jubilee is the mega Shemitah. And so not only is it a year of release, it's also a year of restoration. And the unique thing about the Jubilee is that it says that in the Jubilee, if you lost your possession, you lost your home, you lost your land, you lost your ancestral inheritance, it says that you will get it back. It'll be restored to you in the year of the Jubilee. Everyone shall return to their family, to their home, and to the land of their fathers. They shall return to their inheritance or their father's possession. So here's that the time of restoration. Now the question: Could this prophetic restoration? Because we know that end time prophecy is linked to or begun with Israel and the restoration of Israel to the land of Israel, and we know that has to happen. We know that's the key point, and we know that Jesus, Yeshua, Messiah, cannot come again until the Jewish people are back in the land, back in Jerusalem, and ultimately returning to Him. So could it be that this mystery of the Shemitah, since it's linked to Jubilee and this restoration of land, could it be that this actually gives us the key? This is where I talk about it giving the end time key of when these things are actually going to happen, or when they do happen and when they will happen. Well, here's the amazing thing. The mystery of the Shemitah actually gives the exact parameters of when these restorations have to take place. 1917 is the year of the Shemitah. It's also the year of a great cataclysm in the world, World War I. But as prophetically, the year of the Shemitah, 1917, it ends then. Now we know, according to this mystery, that if the Jubilee comes after the 49th year or the 7th Shemitah, then we know that the Jubilee or this restoration has to take place the year after a Shemitah. So you have 1917, year of the Shemitah, ends September 1917. The year after that, which would correspond potentially to the Jubilee or prophetic restoration, would be September 1917 to September 1918. That's the parameter set by the mystery. So could it be that there's a restoration, prophetic restoration, linked to the Jewish people and the land, the Jubilee, in that time period? Well, the answer is yes. What happens in that time period is the Ottoman Empire, the land of Israel is in Turkish hands, Islamic hands. It falls. The British Empire gains the land of God. They issue a declaration, the Balfour Declaration, that says the Jewish people can basically return, that this land can become the homeland again for the Jewish people. This is the first time after 2,000 years. It's a jubilee. The Jewish people are now returning to their family, their home, their ancestral possession, jubilee. But when does it take place? It takes place in November 1917. That's exactly in the parameter set by the mystery that follows the year of the Shemitah. Now, what happens if you fast forward and we go to find the next seventh Shemitah? Well, that takes us to the Shemitah of 1965 to 1966 September. So the year following, that year that would correspond to the Jubilee would be September 1966 to September 1967. Did anything significant happen during that time? Well, we know it. In the midst of that year set by the parameters of the mystery, when restoration has to happen, so Israeli soldiers storm the Lion's Gate. They come to the Temple Mount, and there they pray and they weep. And you know what has to happen at the time of the Jubilee? What has to happen is that you have to sound, according to God, His command, you have to sound the shofar. Well, the first thing they do at that wall is Rabbi Shlomo Goren, the military chaplain. He picks up his shofar and he sounds the shofar at the Temple Mount. It's the most famous blowing of the shofar in modern times. And the thing is, he's fulfilling the ordinance of the Jubilee. Now, it's a prophetic Jubilee, and again, like the Harbingers, it's not like he knows what he's doing. I mean, like he knows that this is the link to the Jubilee. He's just doing it. And Rabbi Shlomo Goren, who blows the Jubilee shofar, he was born in the year 1917, the other Jubilee, the other seventh Shemitah. And it is his 50th year. It is his Jubilee year, and he's the sounder of the shofar. Now, what happens if we fast forward one more time? And and again, it's like with the Harbinger, it's like with the Shemitah. It's not. I'm not being dogmatic that something has to happen. It could be, God could have just done that, and that would be enough. That would be incredible. I mean, that it's exactly according to the seventh Shemitah that the land and then the city is restored. But, what if it were to continue? Well, the next seventh Shemitah from 1967, 66, 67, brings us to the year 2015 and the year of the Shemitah. And therefore, that if there is going to be this is the mystery of the seventh Shemitah, that I decided to put it at the end of the book because it's kind of this is the end time prophecy and it's amazing. But if it goes to this period, then it would be September of 2015 to September of 2016. Now, if it follows the pattern, it doesn't have to, but if it did, then the last two times would indicate that it speaks of a war in the Middle East, a major war, a gigantic war. In 1917 it was World War I. In 1967 it was the Six-Day War, dramatic war. Number two, that the war involves Israel and specifically the land of Israel. And number three, that in somehow it results or brings about a prophetic end-time restoration. 1917 is the restoration of the land. 1967 is the restoration of the city. And then, well, leave it up to you. But this is another reason. I mean, again, God doesn't have to do anything, but that's why I wrote the book, because we need to be aware of the signs of the times, and so much is converging.
You know what, ladies and gentlemen, I look at Rabbi Cahn's two books as really an intricate roadmap, and it's interesting because to me, Mr. Cahn, it's like you remember those pictures within pictures, or those abstract art you'd find in the kiosks in the mall back in the 80s. You'd walk in the mall, you'd look at them, you have to look at them for a long time, and then you see the picture within the picture, it's hidden in there, and you see the horse and the cart and the trees and all that. Well, anyway, your work reminds me of identifying those hidden pictures within the pictures. It's just fantastic the way you have laid all of this out. We've got so many questions that are on this topic as well. Boy, people want to get you. Man, we can keep you here for days. People want to. Let me see here. This is from Jake, listening live.
Yeah.
What's your thought, Joe? Did you get this too? What's your thought on the blood moon cycle that we're currently in? And does it have any relevance?
Okay. Well, a few things. I mean, of course, I'm sure that many of your listeners are aware. But in a nutshell, for those who are not, basically the blood moon is that it's not the fact that there are blood moons. It's the fact that they follow a pattern, and the pattern is a tetrad, which is 4 blood moons in a row in 2-year period, which all fall on Hebrew holy days. And the pattern has been that in 1967, interesting, we just talked about this. 1967, you have this 4 blood moons that fall on the Hebrew holy days, and of course, 1967 is the year of the Six-Day War and Jerusalem. Then, if you go back, it's not exactly 48, but 49 and 50, still around the time of the War of Independence. Around that time, you have another tetrad, which is again happens at a very critical time in prophecy, the rebirth of Israel. Around that time, and then the other one that's cited is 1492, which is the blood moon. I believe is right after that, but it's still a major time in Jewish history. A very great cataclysm, the expulsion of the Jewish people from Spain, which ultimately is going to link to the founding of America. So does it have to, be significant? It doesn't have to. But again, all these things are converging. So you've got that. The majority of the blood moon period is the Shemitah. And, is the Shemitah of 2000, well, particularly it's going to be 2015. So you have that. And then you have the last one, which comes, the interesting thing, we haven't seen something that, people may have expected with the blood moons yet, but the last one comes at this critical autumn time, this Tishri, this month of Tishri here, of the, which is in the wake of the Shemitah. It comes, the Feast of Tabernacles, around that time. So it comes at a very peak time. But then another thing, so again, I don't think you can dismiss it. I think you need to be aware, without being dogmatic about it, be aware of it. And, the other thing about it is that, another sign, you were talking about the moon's turning red. Well, right. The other sign that's given in the Bible of judgment is the sun being darkened. Now, it's not saying that every time there's a solar eclipse that means that there's judgment. But it can be linked to judgment. It can be. So the interesting thing is there's 2 solar eclipses coming now in this year of the Shemitah, and each one is pretty amazingly significant just by the timing. The first one in the spring is going to mark the exact center day, the exact day that marks the center of the Shemitah. That's where the sun's going to be darkened. Then, if you go, the next one is going to happen on Elul 29, the wipeout day. So on the day of the darkening of the sun, that will be the wiping out day, or Elul 29 day, the sun will be nullified, the day of nullification, wiped out. I mean, in a sense, darkened. So you got, again, now yet another convergence. And, the thing is that the last time the sun was darkened on Elul 29 of the Shemitah, well, what happened was it ushered in one of the worst collapses in stock market history, which ushered in, including Black Monday, the greatest one-day percentage loss in world history. And then it happened again in the year 1931. It happens actually on Tishri 1, it's Elul 29, Tishri 1 right there. It happens at that point of the Shemitah in the Great Depression, which ushers in the greatest month collapse in world history. So it's going to happen again. And I'll throw in some things here. One is that a lot of people didn't realize this happened, and a lot of people still don't realize this happened. This is one of the things that happened after the book that's been coming true from the Harbingers continuing. That one of the Harbingers, and this is going to link up with all this, one of the Harbingers is that tree of judgment, that Erez tree, that where they planted to replace the fallen sycamore, which Israel did, in the last days of Israel, a sign of defiance. We're not going to be humbled. Lord, you humble us. That tree fell. We're going to put a stronger tree in its place. We're coming back stronger. Well, they plant the tree. The tree is the same tree that is mentioned in the Hebrew of Isaiah 9:10. They perform the same act of replacing the sycamore with this Erez tree, same tree. They have a ceremony around the tree. It's a symbol of it. We're going to come back stronger than ever, another defiant sign, this Harbinger. But one of the signs of the Bible of judgment is the withering away of a tree. We know that from the New Testament. It's also in the Old Testament. The withering away of a tree. Well, what happened to that tree of hope? The seventh Harbinger representing America. That Harbinger, that tree has been withering away at the corner of Ground Zero, representing America. So here, I believe, a symbol of America withering away spiritually as it heads to judgment. But then, not only that, I mean, and no matter what they did to save this tree, the tree of hope, they changed the soil, they did everything they could, and that symbol, that Harbinger, just kept withering away. And so they propped it up by a rope. I mean, talk about symbolism. Well, something happened. And one of the signs in the Bible of judgment, an even more severe sign of judgment than the striking down of the sycamore that happened at Ground Zero, is the striking down of the Erez tree, because the word Erez means strength. When God talks in the Bible about the cedars, the lofty cedars will fall. Well, that's a symbol of the coming destruction of a nation's glory. Well, this past spring, something happened at Ground Zero. The tree, the seventh Harbinger, was struck down. The seventh Harbinger was destroyed, and they destroyed it. I mean, it was dead. They couldn't say. They destroyed it on a Hebrew holy day, and the day it was destroyed in the day on that Hebrew holy day. That night, the moon turned red. It was the night of the first blood moon. So the whole period of the blood moons was ushered in by the fall of the seventh Harbinger on the very same day. And so it's interesting because I've done teaching since the Harbinger, because of all the things that have happened since, that there were basically two Harbingers that were still forming, and one was that tree, or changing. One was that tree of the Erez tree, and now it's destroyed on the first of the blood moon. Well, the other tree, the only other Harbinger that is in a sense standing, is that tower at Ground Zero. And when that tower at ground zero was, when they put up the spire to complete it, that when they did that, something happened in the heavens. The sun was darkened. It was another darkening of the sun, a solar eclipse on the day, a symbol of judgment, on the day of the tower, of its completion of its height. And now the sun's going to be darkened again on Elul 29, the day of nullification.
Okay.
Wow. That's a whole lot to think about. Got another question from a listener, Jonathan, and it pertains right to the blood moons and the time period we're talking about. In the last blood moon in September, we know that the Pope is coming to America. It also coincides with I believe the 70th anniversary of the United Nations becoming a recognized government body. Do you see any correlations with the timing of the Pope coming and the anniversary of the United Nations?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I've thought about that. You know, the Pope is coming to he's going to come to, I believe, Washington. I believe he's also coming to New York. So it's very interesting around this time of, again, this is Tishri. This is the Tishri of the end of the Harbinger, the end of the 7-year period, of the Shemitah. So this is a time which has been linked to collapse in the and actually, again, the last look back in history, I mean, it's collapse and collapse. So this is all happening during that period. So it could be. I mean, the fact that there's focus or attention on Washington and New York City, this is happening. Also the fact that the United Nations, very interesting, 70 anniversary. 70 is also, it's also, there's a few 70 anniversaries, because this is kind of like the ending of the Second World War. This is the 1945, which was on a Shemitah, by the way, another Shemitah year, which is a cataclysmic year, and now we're on the 70th anniversary of that, which is also linked to the United Nations. And the reason why the United Nations is in New York City is because America became the center of the world. Well, could that be ending? Could that period be ending? With Israel, it was 70 years of the Shemitahs, of the judgment, and now we have one Shemitah to another Shemitah, marking the 70 years. So very interesting. And the other thing is that when we reach Elul 29, which is going to happen, the same month in September, and remember also that Elul 29, what happens, it ushers in when the sun sets, then the trumpet sounds. That's the beginning of the Feast of Trumpets, at the same, another prophetic time. But this year, it's interesting because it's coming on a Sunday. And a Sunday, the stock market is not open, except it does begin to open overseas at around the time of the sundown. But interesting. But what it may point, if something is going to happen, and again, I'm not a date setter, even though I give the dates in the book. But the thing is that and nothing has to happen, but it could point to something even greater than a financial collapse happening, or that it will cause a financial collapse or be linked to it, but it might even be a greater event, just like 9/11 wasn't a financial event, but it caused the collapse on the actual day of the Shemitah. But the other thing is that the last day that the stock market will be open in September, before Elul 29, before that weekend, has an interesting date. The date is September 11th. It's 9/11, the anniversary of where it all began. It'll be 2 Shemitahs, 2 7-year periods from 9/11, and that'll be the last day as it enters into Elul 29, the wipeout day.
Wow. Kind of full circle, isn't it, Joe? I mean, it's fascinating.
Absolutely. If we could jump a little off track here, and this is more about the your speculation and opinion of this and Obama as president. Do you think that Obama has any significance in prophecy? Is he here to oversee the final ushering in of the end of this nation, or do you think we will have another presidential election? And what is Obama's role in all this, if any, thing other than a puppet?
Well, I believe that I'm not judging the heart or the motives, but a nation gets what it asks for, and America was heading away from God rapidly, with or without this president. But what has happened is the president has expedited, has speeded up, has been a catalyst to speed up the the apostasy, the fall, the spiritual, moral, and I believe ultimately, a greater fall than that, of America. I mean, he has speeded up the redefining of marriage, the ending of the biblical definition of marriage, has advanced the killing of the unborn, has, generally downplayed the faith, the Christian faith, has taken actions that, whether directly or indirectly, have led to persecution of believers. So I believe it's significant in that sense. I believe it's a sign of judgment. Leaders can be good or bad. I mean, we have to pray that there is a turnaround there in the White House as well. The other thing is that, interestingly, is that from the Harbingers to the Shemitah, that there are leaders that are involved in these prophetic events and these warnings and these signs of judgment. And that's the way it was in ancient Israel. It had to be leaders who spoke this vow. So the interesting thing is that you see these things take place in Washington. You see, the vow of judgment is spoken on Capitol Hill, on the very floor of the House of Representatives, in front of every member of Congress. It's actually vowed by a senator, and then a few years later by another senator running for vice president, and then President Obama has been used, has been in several of these cases. On his first speech as president, he actually vowed the vow. In American prose, he vowed the vow of judgment, made it the center point of his speech. We will rebuild. And then he inscribes the words of judgment on the harbinger of judgment, the tower. And then, and even now in his State of the Union address recently, he was almost like he was basically saying the vow. I mean, it was like the framework of the entire speech was the vow. And he was saying, except he wasn't saying we're going to do it. He was saying, we've done it now. We have rebuilt. We've come back stronger. We've done it, which is, again, to me, a sign that, that the judgment is approaching. And interesting, in his second inaugural address, he chose a poet to give a speech, to give a poem, and the poet gives a praise of thanksgiving not to God but to the works of our hands, and to speak about this kind of prideful thing. He boasts in the tower going up at ground zero during the inauguration, the harbinger, and he speaks of it going up, and he says, as it jutted to heaven, and he says, even heaven yields, or the sky yields to our resilience. I mean, this is like Isaiah 9:10. I mean, right there. So I believe this is a sign of judgment, and I believe that he has. I'm not saying this was his intention or not, but he has furthered America's day of reckoning, of its fall, its collapse, the ending of the American age, and the time of our approaching judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see this happening every day, the acceleration, and I do believe that you're right, we get what we ask for. Mr. Cahn, we've only got about 5 minutes left. This is a question I'd just like to ask you, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but let me just ask this anyway. If this was your last message, if this is your last public address, and we speak to a pretty large audience, what would you tell? What would your message be? What would you tell those who are listening? Because these are dark times. So is there a message of hope? Is there a message of warning and hope? Or what would your message be?
Yes. Well, I'll say something, right off the bat, and again, we could go on for hours. And by the way, it's truly a joy to speak to you guys. It's a wonderful, wonderful forum that you have, and a few things are that, first of all, with the beginning of this Shemitah that we're in the pattern has been the major thing, the dramatic thing. If it's going to happen, happens at the end. But sometimes there are foreshadows at the beginning, and there have already been several key foreshadows that have happened at the beginning of this Shemitah. I'll speak about that in Florida, but I will mention just one thing, and then I'll go to what I believe is for each of us. I've warned for a long time that if America doesn't turn back to God, then the American age as we know it will come to an end. That's what the warning of the Shemitah is, and there's a whole mystery we didn't touch upon yet, but that is about the rise and fall of nations are all geared to the coming of the Shemitah, and here we are in one now. Well, the American age began in 1871, as we said, with that tower, began in 1871 where it became the strongest power on earth, economic power on earth. Well, the Shemitah began and in at the very end of September, and within 2 weeks of the Shemitah beginning, the American age, as we know it, has come to an end. America is no longer the strongest economic power on earth. That age is over. It's been supplanted by China. The crown has passed to China, and the crown as head of nations is beginning to pass. I believe this is going to open up the scenario of end time prophecy, because America is not the head of nations at the end. Now, what do we do? There are people listening in America. There are people listening all over the world. This has to do with everybody, because what happens with these things are going to touch the whole world. I believe this. First of all, everything that can be shaken will be shaken. And so what do? First of all, if you are not born again, the message to you is this. If you're saying, how can I be safe? I want to be safe. Should I build a shelter? What should I do? Well, I would tell you this. In Hebrew, the word for safety is Yeshua, and Yeshua is the name of Jesus. The only safety is in Him. Outside of Him, there's no safety. Inside of Him, there needs to be no fear. So if you're not in Him, if your life is not in Him, it doesn't matter what your religion is, if you're not in Him, if you're not born again, you need to be born again. And secondly, if you are in Him, but there are things in your life, look at your life. If there are things in your life that are not in the will of God, they're outside God's will, the time is to get them out of your life now. Don't say tomorrow. The time is late. Whatever is against the will of God is under judgment. And so do not share in judgment. Get it out of your life now. And whatever God is calling to get into your life, the time is do it now. Do it today before you even go to bed. Start it now. Take the first step, because the time is late. And if we are watching the dark getting darker, which is what's happening, if the dark is getting darker, then it's time for the lights to get brighter. These are the days we sing, these are the days of Elijah. Well, we have to be the Elijahs of the day, because the days of Elijah were days of apostasy, were days of persecution. But Elijah stood strong. God is looking for not the many who are lukewarm now, but He's looking for the few who will be on fire for God. You be that person. You who are listening, you be that person. You be that church. You be that people. And God will raise you up, and God will keep you, and God will anoint you for such a time as this. These are prophetic times, and we must be prophetic people. And so, if the church, if the people of God had been the salt of the earth they were supposed to be to America, it could never have gotten as rotten as it is. If we had been the light to America, it could never have gotten as dark. But God is now calling us to be great. You see, these are the times that produce the greatest believers. And so God is calling us to be great. But to be great, you have to be bold. You have to get compromise out of your life. Be uncompromised. Don't be intimidated by the darkness. Be stronger than ever. Be a light, and God will use you. The light that shines in the middle of the day, it's easy to shine, but you can't really see it. But the light that shines at night, it's harder to shine, goes against the grain. It's going to can light up the night. And God has called us to light up the night. So is there hope? Yes. As long as there's God, there's hope. I don't believe that a revival will come without shaking now. I believe that revival can come through shaking, but we have to be the leaders of revival. And that's why it says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, I will hear they'll turn from their evil ways, I'll hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and I will heal their land. We have to be that people. We need to pray for revival, but not just for revival. We need to start living in revival, not just praying for it, but living it. Start the revival now, and you, God, one person, and certainly you people who are listening now as a remnant, you can change the world, and you can accomplish God's purpose and fulfill His calling for such a time as this.
What a
Amen,
wonderful, magnificent message. Wow, Joe. Well,
fantastic. I want to ask this before we let you go, sure. Reverend Cahn. Do you have any other media interviews, speaking engagements, aside from Orlando? Any radio interviews in the near future coming up?
Yeah, I'm all over the place. I have one tomorrow on the phone, and then in Orlando, I'm probably doing like 5 different speaking events there, and I'm going to be on TBN, and I'm going to be, I'm all over. So I don't have the specifics, but I'm all over. If people go online or something, they'll see it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Excellent.
hopeoftheworld.org. That's Jonathan Cahn's website, hopeoftheworld.org. And by all means, ladies and gentlemen, grab his books, and the link to purchase the books are on our website, hagmanhagmann.com. Mr. Cahn, thank you so very much. Yep. And
thank you, guys. It's an honor and a blessing, and I really look forward to meeting you, and truly was a joy, and keep up the great work.
All right, brother. Thank you, man.
God bless you.
Thank you. You
God
too.
bless.
God bless.
Thank you.
Joe kind of leaves you, really, he's a remarkable man, the remarkable books. It's just a fantastic interview. A lot was said tonight, and folks, I hope the message resonated. What a powerful closing statement he made. It was just a fantastic closing statement. Go ahead, Joe.
And, we could keep going for hours, I'm sure. There's so much to talk about, so much that he covers. There's so much more in his books, though, and different YouTube videos and interviews he's done. If folks, if you're interested in what you heard tonight from Jonathan Cahn, and you can't purchase his books, simply go on YouTube or on iTunes and download some of the podcast shows from Rick Wiles to some of the different people who've had him on and the different interviews he's done that are free on YouTube and other places. And there's so much in each interview, more information, different information. There's a lot out there and a lot more to this than what we were able to get into tonight. So I would encourage everybody to do that if that is something that they're interested in. Again, his website is hopeoftheworld.org. And bookmark that website, and you can keep up with the speaking engagements and interviews he does do, and with his ministry. And you can support his ministry, pray for him, support it financially, however, and whatever it is that you can do for him. If what you heard has inspired you, opened your eyes, and helped you in any way. And with that, we're going to take our top of the hour break. Do you want to say anything before we go out?
No, it's just great. We're going to see him in Florida, and folks, I spoke to Paul McGuire right before airtime, and he asked me to ask everyone, please make your final arrangements if you plan on attending in person the prophecy in the news summit in Orlando. Please do so. Please make your final arrangements. It's really a huge task to get everything together. So. If you're planning, if you think you can go, by all means, make your reservations as soon as possible because they're trying very hard to wrap everything up. That's the other thing I wanted to say.
And there's also the live stream. If you can't afford to go, if you can't make it to time or your job, whatever it is, I'll post a link in the interactive chat. But go to HagmannandHagmann.com or prophecyinthenews.com, and in there is the $50. Purchase. You can purchase a live stream. Watch it from the comfort of your own home when you want to. You don't have to watch it live. You can go back and watch it anytime throughout the conference and after the conference until the DVDs come out, I'm sure, and even beyond that. But that's prophecyinthenews.com, or go to HagmannandHagmann.com and click on Orlando Prophecy Summit, and you will find there all the information and ways you can register if you want to be there in person or go the online route. The links are all there, and there's a phone number right up there for help if you need help. And I would suggest everybody who can't make it live, get the live stream, because it is a fascinating place where we're going to get all these intriguing and top experts in their field of whatever it is, if it's a doctrinal issue, if they're talking about, as Russ Baruch talks about, the Shroud of Turin. Tomorrow we're going to have Dan Goodwin on his book, God's Final Jubilee, I believe the title is, and he's going to be joining us tomorrow as speaker down there. Paul McGuire will be down there. I mean,
Joe,
just so many people.
That question, it was interesting that we got that question because God's Final Jubilee by Dan Goodwin. I've got the book. I just finished the book earlier today. Well, late last night, early this morning. Did you read it? Oh yeah, man.
No, I didn't actually. I was reading Josh Peck, his new book that he sent us via PDF, and I got to say that what I've read there so far is great. The next one I'm reading is Mr. Goodwin's God's Jubilee, and I'm going to read that as much as I can tomorrow because he will be joining us tomorrow night. Well, and he's a fascinating, upbeat guy, and we're going to have a great interview with him.
It's interesting how Jonathan Cahn's information and Dan Goodwin's tomorrow night's guest, his information, it's kind of a sequel, if you will. And I know we're over time on the break, but the other thing I want to mention as well, Joe, this is pretty much finalized after a conversation with Paul today. I'm honored and thank you so much, Paul. Folks, Paul's got a new book coming out. More on that later, but I'm honored to be able to write the foreword to that book. And folks, it's going to be, I mean, Prophecy of the Future of America was fantastic. Standing Down Goliath is fantastic. This next book is incredible. So I just want to say that.
Yeah, don't screw up the forward there. No, I know you'll do a good job here.
Yeah.
Fantastic writer. Let's take our break, top of the hour break that we're a little bit late for, and when we come back on the other side, we can recap and take calls about what you heard. Final hour this Thursday, February 19th, 2015 edition. If you missed the first 2 hours, we interviewed author of the Harbinger and the Mystery of the Shemitah, Jonathan Cahn, Rabbi Jonathan Cahn. His website, again, for those who might have missed it, is hopeoftheworld.org. That's hopeoftheworld.org. Definitely go back and listen to those interviews, or that interview tonight if you missed it. Absolutely fantastic. So much information. Jonathan Cahn is a inspirational guy who is, doing the rounds, and he's going to be in Orlando. And I say doing the rounds, I mean the media interviews, media TV shows. He is a guy in high demand. People want to know what the Lord has shown him, what he has written in his book. They want to hear about his thoughts on what he wrote about, and pick his brain. And we were fortunate enough to be able to do so, and I hope we're able to do it again here in the near future, as it was a fantastic interview.
Yeah, Joe, he was on, it was John B. Wells yesterday, I think, or, yes, he was yesterday, J.B. Wells.
Okay. And, I listened today to a few interviews he did. One was from a month ago from the Rick Wiles show, and that was just fantastic. I listened to it 1.5 times, actually, because I listened to the interview all the way through, and then I went back about halfway through the show and started again. And, it was a great interview. So anytime I hear him, and I can't wait to see him speak in Orlando. So once again, the Orlando Prophecy Summit, if you can't go there live, $50 for the live stream. You'll have access to it during the conference and after the conference. And it's something that if you can't go and you're interested in seeing many of the people who are on our show, guests on our show, talk about topics that are relevant, new information also, get that live streaming link, because we have three speakers who speak in 3 different rooms all at once. So even the people who are there attending won't be able to get to see all the speakers. So they're going to have to, that's included if you attend, is the live streaming. So for those of you at home, you'll get to see it live just as much as the rest of us, and then go back and watch the live streaming like we'll have to do also. That's
right. Yeah. Yeah. And we might have to ship you down in bubble wrap. I don't know, right?
No, I should be fine.
Should
be fine. Just a quick word on that. I want to thank everybody for all the prayers, the emails, and just all the support. I received a lot of feedback of people saying that they were praying and that they were fasting and all these things for my recovery and for the surgery. And I just can't thank you guys enough for all that support. The prayers definitely help. I know I'm in God's hands, and what He wants to do with me He's going to do. But I also know that those prayers help so much. And I once again just want to say thank you, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Yeah, we've got a very, this is really a tight-knit family, a very close family of listeners. We appreciate you all, and thank you so much for everything. And Cahn, Colorado, thank you so much for setting up the interview with Jonathan Cahn. That was a great interview. Going to have to go back and listen to that again. Sometimes being on this end of the microphone, you miss things, and anyway, a lot of news, a lot of stuff. Go ahead, Joe.
We have callers lined up. We will get to some calls, but a few news pieces here that I think are relevant and important to talk about. I don't know if you guys saw this or if this has been being talked about in the news circles from the mainstream media to alternative media, but Hillary Clinton, some of her foundation and donation numbers and how much money she raised was released today. And this from the Washington Post. The Clinton Foundation raised nearly $2 billion in the recent years as she's heading up an attempt for a presidential run. But It says, since the creation in 2001, the Bill and Hillary and Chelsea Clinton Foundation has raised close to $2 billion from a vast global network, including corporate titans, political donors, foreign governments, and other wealthy interests, according to the Washington Post Review of Public Records and newly released contribution data. The total representing cash and pledges reported in tax filings includes $262 million that Clinton raised in 2013, the year she stepped down as Secretary of State to begin to devote her energies to the foundation and to a likely second run for president. The financial success of the foundation, which funds charitable work around the world, underscores the highly unusual nature of another Clinton candidacy. The organization has given contributors entry outside the traditional political arena to a possible president, foreign donors in countries that are likely to have interest before a potential Clinton administration are yet ineligible to give U.S. political campaigns money, and they have affirmed their support for the family's work, although the charitable, aside from the charitable giving. And the Washington Post goes on to review the data of income, and they said that the majority of the money had been raised in the last 3 years for the 2016 presidential campaign she plans on launching.
You know what, Joe? I got a couple of emails here over the course of the last couple of days. I have not responded to them, and I plan on doing so. But I'll tell you, there were questions about the 2016 elections, and I think we might have covered this with somebody, another guest, perhaps. I don't know, but you know, everyone or many people say we might not have elections in 2016. I'm becoming more convinced that we'll have them. I really kind of think that way, because not having them would draw more attention to the nefarious plans and machinations of the people involved. I think we just have to realize that regardless of who gets in, it's going to be the same playbook, a different name.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I was looking at the history of George Bush, number one, George Bush Sr., and the Bush really dynasty, a political dynasty, and from being the head of the CIA to definitely being part of the JFK assassination, the connection to the Dulles brothers, the Bin Ladens. I believe, and would not be surprised if Jeb Bush came in to finish the job his father started, which is the New World Order, being established permanently, predominantly, as the government. It wouldn't surprise me. We saw how he was I learned that Ronald Reagan once said that, George Bush or no member of a secret society or somebody who's part of a secret society would be a part of his administration. And then, a few days later, he announced that Bush would be his vice president and his running mate. And then, he got shot not too long after that. And you go back to Kennedy, and it just looks like they've been trying to access the power chair, and the difference between the Clinton and Bush is really in name only. We see even the Obama connection to the Bushes and the Clintons carrying out the same policies and embracing the same policies he tore apart in his 2008 run, tore down George Bush's policies and his warmongering, only to ramp it up himself. And what a White House look like with Hillary Clinton in it, or Jeb Bush, for anybody that's on the board for that matter. What kind of changes would we see for the positive, if any?
I don't think we would. And in terms of Hillary Clinton, she just moved down the hall from where she used to be. But if it does shape up to be a Bush, Jeb Bush, Hillary Clinton type of operation, I can see Jeb Bush getting in there, but not changing anything. It's still rushing headlong into disaster. I can see that. But you mentioned that $2 billion over the course of 14, 15 years.
Yeah, that's so much money.
Yeah,
it's more money than I would say. One of any of the main news agencies on cable TV made in that time, or most. 99.9% of any working person, regardless of how high or low your job is. Who else is pulling in that kind of money? in 15 years, in a lifetime, let alone 15 years, for political reasons and through speaking engagements and donations. And this is a person who is, I don't want to say evil, but tends to lean towards the worst interests of the American country and laws and rule of law of this nation and the people of this nation, and works for exclusively, seemingly, the globalists.
That's right. There's something dramatically and drastically wrong with this money for control. I mean,
yeah, I feel like Henry Kissinger, raising the $2 billion in 10 years to run for a presidency. I mean, they picked it's the most obviously. Not only would it be fraudulent in so many ways, from the crimes in the State Department that were committed to the trail of bodies that was left in her husband's administration, but to think that another, let alone the two-party system and the people who are stuck in that, to think that a Bush or a Clinton, even if you are stuck in that two-party paradigm still, could be a solution to anything. I just can't get past that or see that.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to pop in with this little tidbit of news. This is something, folks, you're going to be hearing a little bit more about, or maybe not. It depends on which way the wind blows, perhaps literally. But HSBC whistleblower spills Lynch evidence to Senate. Now, we of course know that the current nominee, Loretta Lynch, nominee for Attorney General, her role in the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday conducted a 2-hour in-camera session, I believe it was, with HSBC whistleblower John Cruz, with HSBC whistleblower John Cruz in its investigation of Lynch, her role in the Obama administration's decision not to prosecute the banking giant for laundering funds for Mexican drug cartels and Middle Eastern terrorists. Now, this is reported on WorldNet Daily. Did you see that, Joe? I mean,
Loretta Lynch, Obama's pick for Attorney General, also went to Harvard, a co-founder of the co-founder, an African-American only sorority, and there was only one other girl at the sorority named Sharon Malone, and she has ties to Eric Holder and civil rights movements. There are other questions raised in Loretta Lynch's pick for Attorney General, how these people all seem to stick together, be intertwined with different histories with each other. They are longtime college friends of Holder and his Holder's wife, and they, as one article reads, continue to be gatekeepers for Obama and the Obama-Holder administration.
Man, Joe, this is so incestuous. And it doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat. It's all one big conglomerate of globalists, and we're seeing this. The nomination process is even captured, and it's under the spell of the globalists and under the thumb of the globalists and all of that. But by the way, Joe, I forgot to tell you this, and folks, I don't know if you might be, I can't remember if I said this yesterday or not. Wait a minute, maybe I might have talked to, I don't know, maybe I talked to Nathan. No, I talked to Nathan the night before last, but Nathan Leal is going to be coming on with us on the 25th. Did you know that, John?
Okay.
Did I tell you that?
No, I know. Talked to him on Tuesday evening.
Okay.
Right after the show. And the 25th is next Wednesday. That's the day before Paul McGuire will be on. But yeah, he had some very interesting stuff.
Well, the reason I brought that up now, it kind of buttressing the Lynch story, is, I've talked to Nathan off air before, and he has found some things. The Super Bowl, the message, he's not done. Part 2 is coming next Wednesday, and his website, Watchman's Cry. In fact, just go to HagmannHagmann.com and click on Watchman's Cry, and it'll take you right there. He was pretty disturbed over what what he found, and that concerns me. And the level of concern is really on par with what you've been hearing, folks, from all of our guests. Now, nothing's written in stone. We don't know what's going to happen. We can certainly, hey, we're all in this together, and we're right along there with each and every one of you. We're looking at this ourselves, saying, well, what's going to happen? But Nathan really, through a series of investigations and research of film taken at the Super Bowl that wasn't shown on television, but posted on social media networking sites, shows something a little bit different than what we saw on television. So it should be an interesting
and Nathan, one of the things that I was thinking about him the other day, as there was another train crash in Virginia or West Virginia.
Yes.
And a bunch of crude oil spilled into a local creek or river, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen stories about it, if the water ended up being contaminated or if the water was saved due to the ice and how cold it was that the creeks were frozen and it kind of kept the crude oil there. But, Nathan talked about on a couple of times he came on our show that he was having visions about these train crashes. And, it was such an obscure thing to have visions about. Not soon after he talked about it, I mean, we had and are still having these series of train wrecks that are, I mean, it just seems so, the odds of him picking, or this is why I believe he is being shown visions of, from the Lord, because he's talking about things, and some of the things he's talking about are so obscure, and odd, and they're coming to pass. And like I said, for having trained around him, to say something like that, and if he were, we'll say, making it up and just picking stuff out of thin air, to him to pick something like that would just be, the odds of that just astronomical. But what's going on with all these train crashes too? That's another question. And what does all that mean?
Yeah.
We're going to have to get into that with him when he comes back on.
It blew my mind with the oil, that Standard Oil, I don't know what you'd call it, manhole falling, and not long thereafter, the oil prices for a barrel of oil dropped like a stone in a quiet pond. So, yeah, man, I don't know. A lot of questions, and we, folks, we're just here trying to make sense of it all, just like each and every one of you. So that's why Jonathan Cahn tonight, and Paul McGuire and others, Steve Quayle and Tim Alvarino. Man, I'll tell you, good stuff. But go ahead, Joe. You take it.
There was
we'll take
some calls after this headline here. I don't know if you see what's on the front of Drudge right now. The title on Drudge pulls up here: Moscow and NATO on collision course. The article goes to the Independent UK, talks about Ukraine crisis. House of Lords criticizes EU and Britain for sleepwalking into crisis as Moscow and NATO remain on a diplomatic collision course. Now, they say diplomatic collision course, but what is NATO? It is basically a military body. It's not a political body. And, a diplomatic collision course, I guess, is a light way to say a war being more imminent, or a disagreement leading to some type of confrontation. They say in the article, though, that the fraught relationship between Russia and the West, which was supposed to improve following an agreement over Ukraine, has descended instead of renewed, after being renewed after a series of tense military and diplomatic confrontations. France and Germany, which had brokered the Minsk Accord last week, were yesterday trying to hold together the increasingly fragile ceasefire in Ukraine amid reports that fighting spreading once again. They say in this article, Kremlin-backed separatists were fighting with, nationalists, but I'm not so sure that they say the pro-Russian nationalist or the pro-Russian, what is it worded here again? Let me see. The fighting once again, Kremlin-backed separatist. Pro-Russian separatist is another way they term or use this term. And I want to say this because I've been doing some research on this, and many of the alleged Kremlin or Russian-backed separatists are not, or have no relationship to Russia other than they want that as their country, as their government, instead of what the United States, the Presidential Inaugural Prayer Breakfast, other people want, the separatists, is to go towards the European Union. It's not like there's a bunch of Russians in Ukraine saying, let's, bring the country back to Russia. It is actually Ukraine citizens who are the alleged pro-Russian separatists or Kremlin-backed separatists. But there are, at the same time, there is money flowing from the Kremlin to certain groups to instigate certain instances of violence that have led to subsequent more violence.
Well,
it's a very convoluted situation.
Yeah, it is. And what I would say to everyone is just look at the state of the world right now. You've got Ukraine, you've got so many hot spots all across the world. Have you ever seen a time like this in recent memory? And I would say, look, I've been on this. Well, you have to cut me in half to count the rings and tell my age, but it seems like this is perhaps one of the most perilous times I can recall, and Ukraine is a part of it. But it's all with Ukraine.
Israel's getting ready to go to war.
Yeah, Israel. I've been hearing some really bad stuff about that.
Yeah, America possibly, talking in the ISIS situation, looking for ways to take down the Assad and the Assad-backed regime, and troops are going to be fighting the ISIS enemy in Syria and Iraq. Not saying that there isn't a threat there, but the threats against that ISIS threw out there, Rome will burn or Rome will be brought down. You see headlines on Drudge, Italy afraid of ISIS invasion, the destabilization of all these nations. And in this article, it goes on to talk about Russia's destabilization of all the Baltic nations. The only place that's not being destabilized, America's being destabilized. We haven't come to a point of mass chaos and violence yet.
It's coming.
As we talked about, which point? You have all these different points that you connect the dots on, which lead to the bigger picture. Looking at each or one individual point isn't going to give you all the information you need, and there's several of these points that can lead to catastrophe or chaos. And which point is it going to be that leads us to that chaos? That's the question, and that's what we need to be looking for.
Yeah, I just my heart breaks for the young children, would be my grandchildren, Joe, your children. You don't have any, of course, but the young people of today. What exactly what exactly are they going to see in their lifetimes and experience in their lifetimes? But then again, I do believe that each one of us listening today, and we're all part of the remnant. We were born for this day. We've got jobs to do, and they'll grow up and they'll have their jobs to do, I believe. But I just want to say one more thing, Joe, and then whatever you want to do. But here's the thing: the enemy within. Look. Folks, I do believe, based on research, recent investigation and information, and Joe has been privy to this, and we've done a lot of work with respect to the Islamic threat within our borders. The CU in New York, the ISIS threat, I believe that we're going to experience. This is my belief. You can call it speculation, but I do believe this to be on the horizon. I can see ISIS striking here within the continental United States, and it'll be a pretty massive kind of strike, whether it's nuclear, biological, chemical, or a combination of both, or a number of things. Using, and I think I spoke with Ted Brewer about this on the Power Hour. But the bottom line here is, this is not a solely ISIS or Islamic terrorist attack. And as Joe has pointed out many times, and so have I, it's who's behind that component. It's more like, setting someone up who's got the propensity to do a certain deed, in this case Muslims, being used by the globalists in order to perpetuate the chaos that will usher in that hammer of martial law. And I see that taking place. I see this taking place here in the short term, or when I say short term, I'm not talking 5 or 10 years. I'm talking, 5 months or 5 days or any time through the next 12 months. That's just my view, and I think it's spiraling so far out of control that there's probably no stopping it at this point. Joe, I don't know if you're going to add. But.
Yeah, there's another headline out of Reuters: Netanyahu on collision course with White House over Iran. And we know you mentioned how we talked to people in Israel who've been following this story and reading different Israeli publications and Middle Eastern publications. Iran is gearing up for war with Iran, Hezbollah, and Israel's northern part has been cordoned off as a military zone. They're getting ready to invade Lebanon, and there is a lot of animosity between the White House and Netanyahu, and it looks like they've been promoting it for years, decades. A war between Israel and Iran, a preemptive Israeli strike on Iran due to its nuclear program or the threat thereof. Whether that happens or however it happens, this war is coming. Okay, and with the animosity we have towards Netanyahu as the U.S. administration, and that's when I say we have, I mean the United States government has. Where if Israel does go to war, a lot of what happens in the end times and the wars with Israel are in the Bible, in the book of Revelations, and it explains what happens to Israel, and it explains what happens to all nations who come against him or her. And nobody wins. I mean, please, read Revelations. Read what it says about Israel. Read what it says about the end times. We could be in the very end days. You could be in your end day. We're not promised a tomorrow, but with the instability in the world throughout all the different parts, you have China versus Japan, you have, all these countries in just utter chaos, all these economies completely on the verge of devastation, all this natural disaster is ramping up, becoming more intense, being named, after mythological deities, the symbolism, there's just so much we could just name and go over and list broadly that has never all been on the playing field at once. And this is going to what you said earlier, Dad, that, now is a time not like any other. And I think we're seeing it play out right before our eyes, and it's unsettling.
Yeah. There's nothing I can add.
I didn't know you were still there.
No,
okay.
I let the words resonate because really there's nothing more I can add. Although I was troubled, and I don't know if you saw this, I happened to catch a recap of Obama's, I don't know what you'd call it, conference or whatever, speech, but I'm troubled. Anyone today who doesn't look at Obama as to me, an enemy combatant or a pro-Islamic terrorist asset in the executive branches is deluding themselves. It's listening or reading the text of his remarks today. It's becoming so obvious, at least to me, and it's becoming so obvious that this selected leader who has overtaken and infiltrated our executive branches is in fact working for the enemy, and by the enemy I'm talking about the visible tool of the Islamic terrorists that we see operating overseas as well as here, preparing here within our own country. But one final note here. Joe, I don't know whether you saw this. Saudi Arabia, our allies, right? Our friends, the people or the royal family. Well, yeah, but you
depends
see
on which perspective. They're the root of the terrorist Al Qaeda. The money, the backing, but on paper, they're our friends and our oil suppliers and.
Well, it was something that caught my attention, and this is on the Christian Post website. Saudi Arabian government reportedly passed a law that imposes the death penalty on people caught smuggling Bibles into the country. Now, this is according to Heart Cry Missionary Society. The Saudi government issued an official statement signifying that capital punishment may now be used on those who bring Bibles into this despicable sandbox, litter box, as far as I'm concerned. My question to you, or anyone listening, what would you do if suddenly tomorrow America became a country where it would, if they found that you had a Bible, you could face decapitation, beheading, the death penalty? I mean, think about that.
Yeah, and it's going to end up coming to America if we're still standing at one point, at that point, because our society is and has been becoming so bankrupt morally and spiritually that it's inevitable when you see what agendas are being pushed and what's happening in other countries. If we can, if you don't mind, let's try to get a couple phone calls in, as we do have people on hold.
You're the boss. Go ahead.
Let's go to area code 315 first. 315? You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey, guys. It's a good show tonight. I wanted to talk about a book that I stumbled across. It was, I can't believe I found it. Have you ever heard of the book ISIS Unveiled?
I didn't know that was a book.
Yes.
Isn't there
you have it, Dad.
Yeah, it's a 1950. It was put out in 1877 by the Theosophical University.
Okay.
Blavatsky.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. My mind was in a totally different direction there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I just got this book, and it's crazy. The thing is, it scares me on the cover, and I don't know what to think of it. It has the Ouroboros on it. You know what that is? A snake eating the tail. It has a crown, but then it has the Star of David with the swastika all intertwined. And one thing I'm trying to understand is, I stand with the, Hebrew people, the bloodline of Abraham, but I think there are people, again, in Israel that are doing something based on what this book is kind of implying. It goes into, like, the Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism and Eastern mysticism and all the other occults and things like that. I'm wondering if ISIS is actually a creation of this order, of this Theosophical University. I mean, it goes back farther than that. And, it just makes me really wonder who is really controlling this whole thing, which is ISIS. And it's kind of like Obama almost is hinting. He keeps saying how they're not Islamic, and a lot of people are yelling at him saying, no, they're Islamic. Well, according to this book, if this book is any indication of who's really controlling ISIS, they're actually a Masonic order, and they're not Islamic. They're not anything. They're of the Masonic, religion. And I don't know what you think about that.
Well,
Joe, your thoughts.
I'll say this, that the United Nations, what you're talking about, ISIS Unveiled, I believe there's a few volumes to that. That is one of the bases for the United Nations religious, I guess you'd say religious one world system of religious belief, which is the Lucis Trust was one of the branches of that, and was later changed. Lucifer's Trust, it was at first. It was later changed to Lucis Trust. But there are a number of publications, even today, from the UN. There's a recent one on religion, which has the same symbols that are on the front of ISIS Unveiled. And caller, I don't know if this, I've talked to a few guests about this, but Amos 5:26, you mentioned the Star of David. I don't know if this is talking about the Star of David, but this verse states, it says, but ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch, and your images the star of your God, which ye made to yourselves. This is talking about the idolatry of Israel. And I don't know if this refers to the end times or not, but Amos 5:6 was the verse.
Well, on page 135 of the first volume of it. There's 2 volumes. They call it the Seal of Solomon or the Hindu origin. And they say that it's actually the Seal of Solomon, and it was used to conjure demons and to control them. And that does line up biblically with the Bible because he fell into the occult. And it doesn't really elaborate too much after that or exactly what he got into, but it says that he got into the occult. He fell from God, and that was something that was bad. And I think it doesn't mean that the Bible's bad or doesn't mean, it doesn't change anything. It still means, God is still in control, but I just think that we don't really understand fully, everything that's going on around us. And I'm lucky I fell into this book, but and I really haven't had a chance to read it, but it's pretty interesting, and I'm looking forward to getting into it. But I also found another book. I don't know if you ever heard of this guy. This was a book that I don't know what to think of it myself. It's called The Hecate Fountain by Kenneth Grant. Have you ever heard of that book? Probably not. Not many people have. I actually never heard of it. I just saw it. It's put out by the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis. But
Joe,
in this book,
have you heard?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Caller, no, I haven't either. That's some pretty obscure literature, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, I just like stumbled upon it, and it's crazy. I just feel like God was really telling me, read this book because it's going to tell you a lot of things. Now, I can't go through everything I've read in this book, but the day I bought it, I was listening to this guy about the Super Bowl and what it really meant, and he was talking about it being the Scarlet Woman. And I was like, well, I guess I'll see if that's really true or not, and I'll wait and see. But the same day I found this book, I was reading, and I got to a chapter to confirm what he was saying. There's a short little sentence. It says, furthermore, the coup is the mystical kala of the female, for 31 enumerates the initials of the Greek title, and I can't read Greek, but the Scarlet Woman. So I was like, that's crazy. He was right. So I looked up. He said the tarot card is a representation of the Scarlet Woman, is what Katy Perry actually did. So if anybody looks up the Scarlet Woman, the exact same image of the tarot card is what she did. Now, then I thought to myself, if the number 31 represents the Scarlet Woman in Greek, I was like, well, what's the implications with Katy Perry? Well, Katy Perry is 30 years old, but in the occult and in Eastern, Asian cultures, they actually count your birth at conception, which is funny that the occult actually admits that birth is at conception, and this is why they do abortion, because blood sacrifice to their gods. But it's funny that this book is admitting to everything, and this book was written in 1992. So that's a pretty big confirmation to me that the entire ceremony of what Katy Perry did during the halftime show was the Scarlet Woman. Not only that, the next song that she sang after she rode that beast was that sex magic song Dark Horse, which is put out by the OTO. If you study anything with the OTO and you look at that symbology, that's exactly what she was doing.
Interesting. Yeah, we know that. Caller, tell me the name of that book again, please. I'm going to have to grab it.
Now, I'm terrible at pronunciation, but it's The Hecate Fountain. It's Hecates Fountain by Kenneth Grant. It's a pretty deep, very, very difficult to read. And they're very expensive on the internet to buy, too, I think, for a book.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that insight. And yeah, boy.
Yeah, we're going to... ISIS Unveiled is an interesting read, and Russ Dizdar talked about this book on Monday and how Blavatsky and I think Aleister Crowley, he mentioned that they were written and inspired by demonic influences while writing these books. And this is go back and if you can listen to Monday's show with Russ, he explains a little bit about this demonic inspired writing and what it means and why it is demonic inspired. And I think that's important. But we appreciate your call. We're going to kind of fit in a couple more calls before the end of the show.
Yeah, God bless you.
Thanks a lot.
On Monday, he was on our show, and he talks about this. Yeah.
Yeah,
Joe.
All
right, we're going to go next to...
My mind was my mind was looking at mom as opposed to wow. Go ahead.
All right, we're going to go to area code... this might be an international call, or 182. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Doug and Joe. How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Good evening.
Hey, I know I call in a lot, so I'm just going to be real brief. First of all, you guys have had a great week. This, as far as the information that you guys have gotten out, God bless you guys. You guys have had a fantastic week. Lord's really been blessing y'all's ministry and the people out here who are hearing what you got, the information that you guys are getting out, and I thank you guys daily for that. Just on that first caller talking, there's another book that I want to recommend to all of your listeners. It was written in the 80s. It's by a lady named Constance Cumby, and it was called Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow, and it links in a lot of the different groups and shows their connections as far as like the Lucis Trust and, of course, going into Trilateral Commission and all of the other ones that we know, the Council on Foreign Relations. So that's another book that I recommend that y'all take a look at if you haven't done so. And you can actually read it free on Google Books. You can look it up, and it's free to read on Google. So I guess that's one thing that the NSA is doing good, is providing some books for people who are searching for the truth on these matters. Following up with what that caller was saying, and I've called about this before, about the Kabbalah and the Seal of Solomon and all of that, I want to refer everybody over to Revelations 3:9 in what we're dealing with, so that we make sure that that people don't try to blame the whole Jewish nation for the problems of this world, but to certain people that are connected with the occult, that are in the Kabbalah, and maybe some of them are in positions of power in Israel or around the world. But Jesus himself said in Revelation 3:9 to the church of Philadelphia, "Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee." And so what we always got to keep in mind is that the Jewish people are the apple of God's eye. The Hebrew people are his chosen people. But we always have to keep in mind that there's this group of people that probably have been going through within the Jewish people, this group called the Kabbalists, that got their studying from Egypt and from Babylon, and created this whole mystery Babylon thing with the Kabbalah. That's that mystery religion stuff. And then they've hooked in with the European elite and with the black nobility families that we know about. And so let's always make a distinction that we are to love the Jewish people and to stand with them, but not necessarily with leaders or some of these people that call themselves Jews but are not, which we're talking about the Rothschild family that took on this Seal of Solomon, which they call the Star of David, and which they took that symbol on, which has already been used as a mark of the beast by Adolf Hitler when he was making them wear armbands and tattoos with the Star of David, or it was really the Seal of Solomon, and that is an occult symbol. And I wish that the Jewish people, as a majority, as a whole, would realize what that star is and what it's representing, and have an uprising against their government to take that symbol down and get back closer to God on things like that. But I just wanted to put that in tonight, and I hope I didn't take up all the time. If you want to get another caller, I can get off the phone now, but I appreciate your time tonight, guys, and thank God for you guys.
Well, thank you so much. Good call.
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to try and fit another caller in here, but we appreciate the call. You have a good night. One quick update. I got a listener who sent this to me and wanted me to mention this. We've got a few calls on this. The Kent Hovind pretrial hearing is happening tomorrow at 2 p.m. So they're asking for prayers and fasting for Ken Hovind pretrial tomorrow at 2 p.m. as he's the one who's in jail over bogus tax fraud claims, and the IRS continues to keep him in jail, being oppressed by judges for not only his faith but his stance on taxes and the government. And I don't know the whole story, but we've had a lot of listeners that have asked us about that. So keep him in your prayers tomorrow for the pretrial, and hope that all goes well.
It's a horrific story, and thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, Kent Hovind, we need prayers, we need action. I mean, this guy's railroaded. Many callers have talked about this. Steve Quayle mentioned Kent Hovind, his plight as well. Thanks for bringing that up, Joe, and listeners. Thank you so much. We'll be following that very closely. It's an injustice beyond anything you can imagine.
Absolutely. So. All right, let's go to caller 979. We got about 3 minutes. 979.
Joe, my program clock says 45 seconds, so you go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to shine a little brightness on all the darkness tonight. Daniel chapter 7 talks about the beast that would be, that are actually nations that would be around in the end time, and you see the eagle's wings mentioned there breaking apart from the lion, which we know the lion is Great Britain and the eagle is the United States. And in Daniel chapter 12, we see these eagle wings again being given to Israel in the end time for the final 3.5 years. And I know we're due judgment. I've read Jonathan Cahn's books. I believe it. But somehow or another, through the prayers, through repentance, through judgment, whatever it may be, it looks like we're not a part of that. In Revelations chapter 13, you see these same animals as Daniel chapter 7, except for the eagle. So somehow or another, by God's gracious will, we pull out. You know, he judged Israel over and over again, but he always restored them. And that's my prayer for our nation tonight.
Amen, caller.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. We are past our time. You have a good night, and we are going to sign off. Tomorrow, Dan Goodwin will be our guest. Jonathan Cahn was our guest tonight. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow, 8 p.m.
Hey, thanks, Joe. See you later, bud.
Have a good night.